Good Evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another round of the NXTGEN Racing PROTO GT3 Championship, as brought to you on the premier sim racing platform on the PC, known only as iRacing. And today marks the continuation of our coverage of round 3 of the championship, where on Wednesday we focused on Lobby 1, the Apex Racing Academy lobby, and tonight we're focusing on Lobby 2, taking a look back at how our drivers got on in round number 3 in the lobby, sponsored by IMB Racewear. And my goodness, we have got a fantastic schedule of racing ahead of us tonight. If it was the case that Lobby 1's racing around the Canadian Tire Motorsports Park was any indicator of what is going to happen in Lobby 2, you can be sure the racing is going to be incredible, and we'll be bringing it all straight to you over the course of tonight's schedule. Speaking of the schedule, times in British Summertime, that's BST or UTC +1, is as follows. In just under 14 minutes time, we'll be getting underway with the qualifying session. That will be the 20-minute session to determine our grid order for the purposes of the opening race. That'll be race number 1, the sprint race, which follows immediately after at approximately 20 past 8, and that'll be a 15-minute race where the only strategy is to get to the front of your respective class and hold on to the lead until the end to pick up the maximum possible points. After that, we'll be taking a brief break before returning at approximately 5 to 9 for the build-up to the feature race, the second of our 2 races this evening, and the feature race, of course, having that strategic element over a 60-minute duration where you have that mandatory pit stop and needing to know when to come into the pits to go for an overcut or an undercut, and make sure to do some fuel saving or tyre management as well, so you don't have to come into the pits a second time. Now, this broadcast is being brought to you live via one of 3 media platforms. Firstly, you can tune in via YouTube and NXTGEN Racing on YouTube. Alternatively, if you are so Facebook inclined, you could go to facebook.com/groups/NXTGEN Racing. And last but not least, you can tune in via Twitch at twitch.tv/TX141. Who is TX141, I hear you ask? Well, that's me, your host and commentator. My name's Paul Walsh, also known as TX141 or Britain a Spit online, depends on what media you follow me on, and I'll be bringing you all of your coverage over the entirety of the championship season of 12 rounds. Now, I did say only moments ago that this lobby, Lobby 2, is sponsored by IMB Racewear, where it's only appropriate that we do introduce our title sponsor for this lobby. Let's bring them to you. So who are IMB Racewear, I hear you ask? Well, IMB Racewear is a company that delivers racewear for both sim and real-life racers, which enables the racer to make the impact they always wanted. What sets IMB Racewear apart from the competition is that their racewear prides itself on individuality because it is designed for you, by you, meaning that each product is fully customizable, unlike your typical off-the-shelf racewear products. Whether you're looking for racing gloves, racing shoes or team clothing, there are no limits to levels of customization available. Moreover, if you want to know more and get your hands on your own bespoke racewear today, then be sure to head to IMB's official website, that is imbracewear.com, for further information. That website, once again, imbracewear.com. Now, we're very grateful to have IMB Racewear sponsoring Lobby 2, indeed our title sponsor for the lobby, and they are contributed to the prize pool. They're contributed to the GT3 class prizes in particular, where a set of custom gloves is up for grabs for each of the GT3 class winners, on top of what is their cash prize pool. Meanwhile, the LMP AM class race in this lobby will have their cash prize pool. The exact values of those cash prize pools to be confirmed, but we're very grateful to have IMB Racewear with us, and indeed a long-standing partner of NXTGEN Racing. But we come from partners to classes, and with that classes, we talk about our championship standings after the opening 2 rounds. What's the story then? Well, we start off with the LMP AM class, and we can see that currently after 2 rounds, it is Sam Holman who leads by only 3 points ahead of Paul Scott. This class has been back and forth in terms of who's been up the front over the course of the last 2 rounds, and it is Sam Holman's consistency over the opening 2 rounds, started off at Watkins Glen and then Road Atlanta last time out, that sees him leading by a small margin. However, Paul Scott, with high variability in his results, we saw he only managed to pick up 8 points at the sprint at Road Atlanta, but good 21 points at the feature race. It is the case he's not too far behind. And Michael Price there as well in P3 on 66 points with 2 13 points finishes, and he'll be looking to try and up his ante tonight if he's able to get himself into the lead of this class come the end of tonight's proceedings. 2 points behind him, Stefan Vessels, the driver, of course, the South African driver known and loved within the NXTGEN Racing community, and it is the case that he's continued to find that form in the LMP2 class, and well, he'll be looking to try and go a bit further tonight, given the fact that he did pick up 2 very good results at Road Atlanta, but not quite up there to take the win. Paul Williams in P5 there, only a further point back, and Mark Baker, of course, his teammate, the 2 Team Tetra Rouge drivers, working together continuously. It is the case they are P5 and P6 respectively, and it's Paul Walton in P7 with that absolutely dominant drive in what was the round number 2 in his debut at Road Atlanta, where he picked up the perfect score of 56 points and was in a class of his own. And I'm sorry to say, Paul Walton will not be racing as of tonight. He's not available, and he did confirm that, if I remember correctly, on the post-round interview after Road Atlanta, but he should be back for round 4 onwards, or at least we hope so, because we do want to see more of the RD Simsport driver. But still, in his absence, Barry Meacham there in P8 in what is 53 points. 2 consistent finishes last time out at Road Atlanta. He'll be looking to try and get some good points to the board to get himself a bit closer to that top 5. Jack Wybon on 47 points. Jim Stanton there in P10 on 35 points. And it is the case that he is ahead by 9 points from his fellow family member of Richard Stanton. And then Jonathan Collins bringing up the rear there in P12 on 13 points. Unable to participate last time out, if I remember correctly, at Road Atlanta. Now, if you thought it was close there, the complexion, meanwhile, in the GT3 Pro class is a little bit different. It is the case that really it's been the RP Motorsport Pro-AM team story so far. We remember all the way back at Watkins Glen, it was the case that Peter Lemkens dominated and put in 2 brilliant finishes and picked up the perfect score of 56 points. Last time out at Road Atlanta, it was the story of Lucas Romano, who picked up the perfect score of 56 points and really was untouchable, with Peter Lemkens being behind him all the way. Albeit you can see now the gap that Lucas Romano has pulled at his teammate has been all the way up to 16 points, and that is because of Lemkens' retirement in the feature race at Road Atlanta, which has put the two at odds in terms of their championship standings, otherwise they'd be much closer. And that means that with Peter Lemkens on 77 points, he's only 3 ahead of Dirt Bounce on 74 points, and that battle for the top 3 really heating up, with Jeremy DeBova and Didi Verlaine there on 69 and 68 points respectively. The top 5 breaking away from the rest of the GT3 Pro class, but by no means is anything settled, because one dropped result could change the whole complexion of the story. Gus Rankin there on 48 points in P6, only 3 ahead of Lamont Wedder, and it's Matthew Prout in P8 on 30 points, and able to take part in the score last time out at Road Atlanta, and Sean Scooter there in at P9 on 27 points. And as we look to the GT3 AM class, well, it is the case the GT3 AM class is a bit of an intermixture between the GT3 Pro and the LMP AM class stories, in the fact we see Navarro DeBova after 2 rounds leading on 90 points. And is the case after that brilliant pair of performances last time out at Road Atlanta, with the win in the sprint and also a good finish at P2 in the feature race. It is one of those situations whereby he's leading, but only by a small margin, and the class is getting ever more competitive. Lorenzo Galtieri there on 85 points, with 2 good finishes at Road Atlanta, but perhaps missing out on some key points in that feature race. And I think he was kicking himself for a mistake or 2 in the feature race, which saw him lose out on the opportunity to level things up with Navarro DeBova. Kurt Van Hoenacker there, P3 on 72 points. It is the case that McChange by DB2 driver, trying to provide that supporting role to Navarro DeBova every so often, but also keep his championship campaign alive. And well, you can imagine he'll be looking to score well tonight, with James Slates and Tristan Dino Brega there completing the top 5. And we need to keep our eyes on Dino Brega in particular, because whilst he had that disastrous sprint race in the feature, he seemed unstoppable. And I do wonder whether that's an indicator of the form he may have here tonight in round number 3. He's down 60 points, only 3 clear of both Davide Fabo and Elwyn Sykes. They're both on 57 points, and it's only on countback that Fabo is ahead of Sykes. Arjun Craig in at P8, they're on 50 points, 3 points ahead of Mark Sykes, not related to Elwyn Sykes, I should point out. Mark Sykes in P9 there for NXTGEN Racing on 47 points, and then Chris Keaton in P10, not picking up any points last time out, 23 points to his name, and Liam Tatt, last but not least, in 11th with 16 points and looking to build up a score. Meanwhile, in the team championships, the Mark Sykes Designs team standings, and remember these teams are split across the lobbies, or they can all be localised to one lobby. It is the case that RP Motorsport Pro-AM are currently leading the way, 20 points clear of McChange by DB2. However, DB2 are battling with Verano Motorsport. They're both on 162 points, and only 7 points behind it is Hilliard Esport, and NXTGEN Racing only a further 7 points behind them. The battle to be in the top 5, if not the top 3, is really heating up in this team championship, and we can see there is the case that behind NXTGEN Racing with Sam Cases UK, only 2 points off of the top 5, and only 4 ahead of Racing Team Astra. That's RTA Team Orange. Further 5 points back in P8, McChange by DB1, looking to build up some momentum, I believe, tonight after a difficult time at Road Atlanta for the team. And Crystal to sport with Apex Tracks on 136 points, joint 136 with Team Tetrouge. They are only ahead based on countback, and Team Tetrouge make up our top 10. Altitude Esports being the first team outside the top 10 there, only 2 points off, and it is the case that Altitude Esports trying to build up more and more momentum as they go, with Racing Team Astra Blue in P12, and then P13 RP Motorsports Senior, just ahead of RD Simsport and Team Racing Netherlands. Outside the top 15, we have TGC Racing in P16 there on 102 points, 2 points ahead of DRS Esports LMS1, and we saw the DRS Esports outfit in what was the Lobby 1 on Wednesday, put in some very good performances, albeit undermined by some mistakes, and we do wonder whether TGC Racing will be able able to keep their advantage come the end of tonight. Excite Racing in P18, 4 points ahead of Crest Autosport Ferrari, who are on 93 points in P19, and CXR Project Black on 92 points in P20. And last but not least in our standings, outside of the top 20 and not to be forgotten about, we do have Hollerton Racing on 71 points, 1 point ahead of Team MRC. And then we have BRM on 53 points in P23, DRS Esport LMS2 in P24, and then right at the bottom of the standings and looking to get some more points on the board, TGC Bottom Split Heroes on 33 points there in P25. Well, that's all about our championship standings, so what about the track for tonight? Well, we are at the Canadian circuit known as the Canadian Tire Motorsports Park, located in Bowmanville, Ontario, Canada. This circuit made up of 10 corners, and you can see from the circuit map provided to us by simracingwiki.com, this circuit is one which takes the concept of a roller coaster ride or high risk, high reward that we saw at Road Atlanta and amplifies it by a factor of 10. That's because there's 10 corners here, but the key thing is the corners around this circuit experience major elevation changes, and the majority of them are blind. In terms of going into the apex, you cannot see the apex until you make your way into the corner, and whether it's over a hill or just on flat ground and turning through the corner, it is the case. So corners such as Turn 1, Turn 2 known as Clayton Corner, Quebec Corner at Turn 3, and Moss Corner, there are these long sweeps into the corners which can really cause the rear ends of cars to step out, whether the front engine rear wheel drive or mid engine rear wheel drive, as we saw in Lobby 1 earlier in the week. And it's going to be about who can keep their cool under pressure and keep it consistent, who will be bringing home the big points here. It will not be about a single lap. It may be in qualifying, but in the races, anything can happen, as we saw on Wednesday in the Apex Racing Academy lobby. But we'll talk more about the circuit and provide you with an onboard lap or two in qualifying. But for now, we look to our race rules, and we can see, as per usual, our drivers shall be running the iRacing sprint setup for tonight's races. In the sprint race, a driver shall receive a drive-through penalty if they accumulate 17 or more instant points. And meanwhile, in the feature race, we have a few more rules to go through. Firstly, the grid shall be set as a reverse grid based on the results of the sprint race. The grid shall be separated into car classes, with the LMP 2s starting approximately 2 seconds apart and ahead of the GT3 class. And I should point out the GT3s will not be segregated based on Pro or AM. It'll be how they finish in the sprint race and then reverse gridded for the entirety of the GT3 class. There shall be one mandatory pit stop, which will require drivers to take on fuel, and changing tyres is entirely optional. So whether a driver can do it on a single set of tyres or not, that's up to them. Each driver will have one fast repair available in the feature, and a driver shall receive a drive-through penalty if they accumulate 20 or more instant points. Well, that's enough about rules, regulations and whatnot in championship standings. We're here for the race in action, and let's head back to trackside right now as we do see our drivers continue to make their way on around. And well, as they do, we do see in the pits there Sam Holman just parked up in the pit lane right now, and really the man of the hour in the LMP2 AM class. And will he be able to hold on to that championship lead? Because we are finding, particularly in LMP2 AM class, in what is the IMB Racewear Lobby 2 here, that there's nobody who's really made that big claim to break away. We've seen Stefan Vessels, a racing team Astra Blue, who we look at now, who had that very good performance at Watkins Glen and a good performance at Road Atlanta, but he's not been able to quite assert his dominance over the field yet, alternatively make that initial break. And it does seem as though it is a very close LMP2 class within this lobby. It seems though week on week we are seeing a lot of variance in drivers, and again, one driver who perhaps goes understated, Michael Price, who is demonstrating time and time again, and currently P2 in this final practice session before they go into qualifying, demonstrating he is building that pace and building that consistency, and the results are trending upwards for Michael Price. Could we see another opportunity at a podium finish here today for the Excite Racing driver, or will we see a little bit more? Could we even see a win? We'll have to wait and see. And then again, much like with what is the LMPs, we also have a similar situation with regards to our GT3 drivers, particularly in the GT3 AM class, with the fact that right now we can see Tristan Dino Brega there, the best part of 1.5 tenths faster than what is Lorenzo Goltieri. And well, it does look as though the racing team Astra drivers seem to be on a bit of form tonight, but could we see Navarro de Bova, of course the youngster from a Challenge by DB2, could he find a way to come back strong versus what they're demonstrating in practice? Because he really is the man at the moment who is in the ascendancy, as he takes a bit of a spin there coming out of what is turn number 3 and rolling across the circuit. That may just be a little bit of frustration there, or a little bit of nerves before going into qualifying. And then again, in what is the GT3 Pro class, where we see Lucas Romano making his way around right now, and of course he's the favourite going into tonight to extend that championship lead. Can he do it is the question, or will he be reeled back in That's the challenge for the RP Motorsport Pro-AM team. They've got two drivers who are very well embedded into the GT3 Pro class. Can they make the break? Well, he won't be wanting to make the break by running wide there and hitting the tyre barrier and throwing it onto the tyres, because I can assure you that's not going to get him any points or any style points. In fact, they don't count for anything. But as we are counting down right now, it is the case we are only moments away from the qualifying session. And whilst we are waiting, we look to our chats and we can say hello to No Mercy NL there in the YouTube chat. I believe that's Lambert Wedder's YouTube account. So hello to you, Mr. Wedder. We've also got there Jeremy DeBova in the YouTube chat. Good evening to you, Jeremy. Arjun Craig as well. Good evening to you there. And also Stanton there, a member of the Stanton family. Not sure which one. Maybe you'll clarify, Stanton. But it's good to see you tuning in. And well, of course, good luck to all our drivers who did take part. Remember, this race occurred on Wednesday. So as a result, we are bringing you a post-race broadcast. It's not live per se, but we're treating it as if it is live. I don't know the results, so I should point out as your commentator and host. So it's all brand new to me. And therefore, that means it'll be as raw as possible as our drivers make their way out onto circuit then for this qualifying session. 20 minutes, all of our drivers, whether in LMP2s or GT3s, will be going out onto the circuit, and well, who will be on pole in their respective classes come the end of the session. Let's find out. And we should point out to you, ladies and gentlemen, on the left-hand side of your screen, you'll see that we have now segregated our drivers based on their respective classes. So rather than showing you the overall standings, we're showing you the standings within each class. That was requested by you guys following feedback from round number 2's broadcast. And if there are any other tweaks that you'd like us to make over the course of the series, we will do everything we can, of course, in order to be able to improve the broadcast for your viewing pleasure. But with that, in this qualifying session now, we can see all our drivers making their way on out, and it is the case that we do see going down the back straight right now a number of GT3s who seem to have found a way to get out nice and early, particularly Jeremy DeBova here, who's wasting no time in making his way on around. But the problem for him, of course, is he does have an LMP2 car coming up very rapidly behind, and they may want to overtake him. But we're going to ride on board here with him changed by DB1 driver in the Mercedes AMG as he takes us around for the opening flying lap of this qualifying session. Making his way across the timeline and trail braking his way downhill into turn number 1 here. Nice on the apex curve, threading it nicely. Now making his way up towards turn 2 here into the long right-hander as he lets the LMP2 go for exciting race. He drifts already. He hasn't got the tyres up to temperature, and well, that is a bit unfortunate for DeBova, but that goes to show you already how easily this circuit can claim a driver. And to be fair, DeBova, one of the veterans of Next Gen Racing Series, indeed a veteran of iRacing Series, and he will be looking to try and correct that next time around as he peels out the way. But we do look from him to Richard Stanton, who's just gone onto a lap here, and as he rolls his way through turn number 2, this very tricky long left-hander where you go over a rise and then down into the corner itself, and it is absolutely painstaking because the car will naturally understeer, but because of the way the road surface changes, it's not level, it's downhill with some bumps in it. It can unsettle the rear end, and you get this weird effect of understeer mid-apex followed by a very severe amount of oversteer as you come beyond the apex. And we can see here Stanton as he makes his way through Moss Corner, turn number 5, named after Sir Sterling Moss, of course, the infamous British driver. And right now Stanton looking very nice indeed as he heads on through. And we can see it there, well, appreciate it, Matt in the YouTube chat. So when we see Stanton there in the YouTube chat, that is Matt Stanton, crew chief for both Richard and Jim Stanton. Indeed, it is a family effort by the sounds of things. That's great to see. And you can also see there in the Twitch chat, it is the case, No Mercy NL also populating the Twitch chat. And if you are tuning in right now, regardless of your platform, don't be shy, feel free to say hi. We don't bite here, and just settle in for some fantastic racing tonight. As we do see here, Richard Stanton coming across that timeline, and that is P3 at 109.227, and it is Holman who seems to strike first blood in the LMP2 AM class with the fact he has put together a 108.7 as they make their way on around here. And well, Holman was the first driver out, and he did manage to find a good amount of space out in circuit. And you can see that on the circuit map in the top right corner of your screen how critical track space is to a qualifying lap. And we saw that time and time again in the Apex Racing Academy lobby earlier this week, just by the fact a number of drivers on good laps and having to abort laps because they found traffic at the worst possible avenue. And that does seem to be the case for some drivers here as they make their way on around. We've got plenty of time in this qualifying session, and therefore there are plenty of opportunities for drivers to find that time as the Welshman, Baz Meacham there, goes provisional pole in class. Well, 107.697 there, a whole second faster than Sam Holman. I think it might be the case that everyone's getting themselves up to speed, and that track temperature is going to build, and as the rubber goes down, the tyre temperatures improve as well. That's going to be critical to the success of all of our drivers here. I think a lot of them are trying to tease out exactly where the grip is, as we do see them Meacham just pushing a bit too hard through the long right, and as a result losing the rear end there coming through the corner. And as he makes his way down through 4 and up into Moss Corner, he's going to try and find those limits. And that's the nice thing about a 20-minute qualifying session, is you have a lot of time to find out where those limits are, where the track is gradually evolving, and you can put in that best possible lap. And we expect the best qualifying laps to occur right at the end, as we do see Meacham here. He's tucking into the slipstream of one of the racing team Astra GT3s. I'm not 100% sure. I think that is Davide Fabo who's just made his way past, and it is indeed Davide Fabo. And right now Meacham coming on through, and as he does roll on through here, we are going to jump on board if he doesn't peel into the bits for a lap on board with an LMP2 to Lara P217 machine, as driven up by the Welshman Meacham. So coming across the timeline down into turn 1, then flicking the car in and using the aero with confidence here to turn through the corner full throttle. And as he makes his way over the rise and into the drop that takes you to turn 2 here, he's got a little bit of traffic ahead, but I think he's going to reach it on the straightaway run out of 3. As he comes into the right hand, you can see going for a nice late apex here, turning through the apex nice and late, which gives him the ability to really attack on the throttle. But he was compromised a little bit by Elwin Sykes there, and the McLaren lifting off as he makes his way down through 4 now and into the braking zone for Moss here, sweeping in, coming down to second gear now, getting the car as wide as possible through the first right hand portion of the apex. And as he makes way for the second apex there, now it's the back straight. You want to absolutely attack what is the Mario Andretti straight here, named after, of course, the famous American driver, as they make their way down the back straight, as they come rip-roaring on down here, all the way up to turn 8. They go for the double kink of 6 and 7, and now heading up towards what is known as the S's turns 8 and 9, breaking down from 6th gear here, coming down to 5th, down to 4th. They're going a little bit of understeer there as he rolls through into turn number 9, going down to 3rd to get the car to tuck in, now down to 2nd for the final corner as he exits on out. What's it going to be for Meacham? Is he able to improve? Well, it doesn't look as though he's going to be improving too much. It is close, but it's not an improvement in the end. He still stays provisional pole with a 107.6. It does seem as though his opponents, such as Price right now, are improving. And Price, to be fair, on a personal best, he comes across the timeline, and Price goes provisional pole in class of 107.623. It is the case. I think we've got a little bit of a battle on between Price and Meacham for that provisional pole position. Although it's not count out, as we see that Jim Stanton there now goes pole with a 107.616, only 6 thousandths faster than Price. The game is on for pole in the LMP2 Pro, the LMP2 AM class, I should say. And as they make their way around right now, well, we talked about how close this class is in terms of pace, whether it's in qualifying or the race, and it is continuing to demonstrate what we absolutely love to see, which is so many drivers in with a chance to be on pole, if not win each and every race. And that's what we want at the end of the day. And we can see right now, whereas Stanton is right at the top here, Jim Stanton, it is the case that Paul Williams, by comparison, is not having a comfortable qualifying session there, which is 4 seconds off, but he finds a bit of traffic that goes a little bit wayward there, and I believe that's why the LMP2s, I think that was Collins who got it wrong. And we see Paul Williams crossing the line there. He had to lift off at the end, so it was a very heavily compromised lap. He improves to 109.1, but I do think the Team Tetra Rouge driver at this point in time maybe just feeling a little bit of frustration because he hasn't been able to find a lap yet that he is happy with, or one that has not been obstructed by a bit of traffic or an instant further up the road that he's had to come up to. As he makes way around this time, as we hear that Stefan Bessels now goes pole in the LMP2 class in what is a 107.4. It is the case that Paul Williams here pushing on, and this is looking a happier lap for Williams, but he's bumped into a bit of traffic. That's Mark Sykes ahead of him, and Sykes, who is on a lap coming through Moss Corner here. Now Will Williams carrying with a lap. Well, he's going to come on through regardless, but it is an aborted lap, I do think. Meanwhile, a bit further around the circuit, we've got Matthew Prouting here in the GT3 Pro class, who goes provisional pole in the class with a 1:14.775, and quite a limited number of GT3 Pro drivers this time out. Only 5 of them taken to the circuit today, so it's going to be a little bit quiet in their respective class, but still it's the case that Prouting right now capitalising on that opportunity with a rather strong provisional pole lap there of a 14.775, and as he makes his way down into turn at number 3, can the BMW M4 driver from Eclipse Racing find even more lap time out there and put things to bed with Lucas Romano right now 1.5 tenths or just over off of him, and it is not going to be the RP Motorsports PRO-AM show anymore. And it is the case that the Eclipse Racing driver here of Prouting is demonstrating that very much indeed as he makes his way out of Moss Corner here, and it is the case trying to set himself up for another lap. Once he makes his way on through, it is the case not too far behind him in terms of lap time is your GT3 AM class provisional pole sitter right now, and that is Lorenzo Galtieri, who on a 14.926 is the second fastest. GT3s, he loses the rear there coming out of turn number 2. The rear right tyre just dipping onto the grass very slightly coming out the corner, and that's going to be a reset to the pit lane, and that shows you how easy it is to get wrong when you're pushing on the limit as our drivers continue their way on around. But he would not have wanted it to go that way, and indeed as he can continues to talk about his qualifying session right now with his engineer. I do think he may be feeling a little bit of aggravation of that. It may have just unsettled a nerve, and that may upset his rhythm a little bit. And that's the key thing here as well. If you can get yourself into a good rhythm, as we do see Lucas Romano having some connectivity issues, that we do hope are resolved at some point. But if you can get yourself into a rhythm, the lap times will come through. And speaking of lap times coming through, it's Tristan Dino Brega there who now takes provisional pole in the GT3 AM class with a 14.858. He is the best part of 7 hundredths faster than his fellow Racing Team Astra driver, albeit from the sister outfit, the orange outfit of what is Goltieri. As we hear the Goltieri is now back out to circuit, and Dino Brega here really coming out the gate strong tonight. Now, as he makes his way on around, he finds a bit of traffic ahead of him, albeit it's LMP2 traffic that I think is moving aside. I think that's Meacham just deciding to lift off there and give some space. We've got a lot of GT3 AM drivers tucked up into Moss corners. We see off circuit, that's Paul Williams who's deciding to go for a bit of an off. And right now, I do think that Dino Brega here is tucking in behind, just in front of him. That's Davide Fabo who's in front of him. And I believe the two drivers here may be trying to work together. Perhaps Dino Brega is trying to size himself up so he can get a distant tow off of Fabo going onto his lap. And that may benefit him a little bit over the course of the lap distance and put that provisional pole time higher and out of the reach of any of his competitors. We will have to wait and see as Fabo flows on through here, and I believe that Fabo may be on, he's on a lap, but it's not an improving lap. And in fact, as he comes on through here, it is not a lap he's going to be too happy with, as he understeers a bit wide, and Dino Brega there has to come on through. And as they make their way down to turn one, well, Fabo backs off in the end, but Dino Brega has had a compromised entry into the opening corner. But whilst they're making their way on through, we looked at Elwin Sykes, and we do ride on board here from the McLaren MP412C driver as he takes us around for a lap after going P5. He's making his way into turn one here, rolling the car through the corner, using the extra rotation that the mid-engine rear-wheel drive car has. And as he makes his way into turn two, bringing the car over the brow, and you can see they're trying to take that U-shape through the corner, uses a little bit of the runoff area there, but keeps it well within the limits. Now rolling the car through turn three, going for that late apex, very nicely composed at Elwin Sykes here. And as he makes his way out the right-hander and now down towards turn five, looking very comfortable in the McLaren, it has to be said. Seems to be enjoying this car very much so as he comes through four and now down to Moss corner here, bringing it in nice and aggressive on the braking. He's gone a little bit deep under braking, and that's meant that he's had to lose a little bit of speed mid-apex. But as he rolls on through now, it is the case. He's got a good exit out of Moss and as Sterling's corner, as they make their way down to what is the turn number 8 very shortly. In fact, getting it right there, going out of Sterling Moss corner and down the back straight here. You see giving way to while the LMP2's going on through, but I don't think he's got too much traffic following him. And as he rolls up into the S's, through turn 8 he goes. And as he comes on through, got a car off there, that's not going to be a problem. Now through turn number 9, keeps it nice in the middle of the road and brings it into the corner before rolling the car into turn 10. Constantly switch back in left and right, and as he makes his way across the timeline, Elwin Sykes, does he improve any further? Not quite nearly, lost out in the final sector, but he was very close to his previous best. He's definitely showing growing pace here. Here's the South African as he makes his way around with 8 minutes of this session to go. But speaking of growing pace, we talked about the fact he'd been struggling early on to find himself some clear track and get in a rhythm. Well, here he is. This is Paul Williams and Team Tech Gerouge in the LMP2 AM class, and he's found himself now in P3. 2 attempts of what is Stefan Vessels and a further half attempt of what is Baz Meacham. But it is the case that right now Paul Williams getting himself right up there. And he is only 4 thousandths ahead of Stanton, Jim Stanton, but to be fair, 4 thousandths is more than enough to get you ahead, and that's the key thing. Whether it's a thousandth or a whole tenth, it doesn't matter. If you're the guy with the faster lap, you will qualify ahead. And right now, Paul Williams pushing as hard as he can, I can imagine, in order to try and get himself well placed, because overtaking here is very possible. But the problem is, if you start in the midfield of your class, going into turn number 1, it is a massive battle zone. Turns 1 and 2, we see a lot of side-by-side battling in those corners where drivers either have to give way or they've got to try and muscle their way into position. And it's the driver who starts on pole in their class, who if they can defend that inside line into turn 1 and not let their opponent go around the outside them to get the inside into 2, they can normally break away over the first half of the opening lap and get some distance before that back straight. And that will be the target of all of our drivers, of course. They'll want to qualify as best as they possibly can here, because overtaking occurs very naturally, and when you have somebody within a second of you coming out of what is Sir Sterling Moss corner at turn number 5, it is the case that that slipstream all the way down to turn 8 can be absolutely horrible for you as the lead driver there. It's crippling in a way for the simple reason that it will feel as though you put all that effort into breakaway only for the driver behind to catch up in your tow. But as they make their way down through turn number 4 and into 5, it is the case that Williams are pressing on here. And well, Stefan Vessels, who we also say hello to in the YouTube chat right now, we can see it's the case the Racing Team Astra driver here goes P2 in the LMP class. He's inching closer to Meacham, and well, the gap between the two of them now only 1.5 hundredths. That's how close it is at the very tip of the spear in the LMP class. And as they make their way around with 6 minutes to go, I think it's the case that Vessel's trying to find a bit of space on circuit as he makes his way up past Navarro over there, and they come down in towards Moss Corner. Now, as they roll them down, we look a bit further afield and we look to Kurt van Hoenack here, the Belgian driver who's really having a difficult day in the qualifying session. The Mercedes AMG, what we expected on paper, should be quite a strong car here because of its weight distribution and also its straight line performance. But it looks like Van Hoenack is just not able to get the Mercedes to work as much as he wants as he rolls his way through the right-hander. And as he comes up into the left-hander at turn number 2 here, well, can he give himself some clear space on track? We just look away from him briefly because Jeremy DeBova right now going very fast within the class of the GT3 Pros, and he goes provisional pole in the Mercedes AMG. So the Mercedes has got the pace here, and the more senior member of the DeBova family is proving it. They were changed by DB1 driver there, takes provisional pole in the GT3 class with a 1:14.491, and that is 0.3 of a second faster than Matthew Broughting's effort so far. We'll wait to see if there is a response. But as we do come back to Van Hoenack, it is the case. Even changed by DB2 driver here. As you can see, he's got an LMP coming up behind him. He's trying to use him as a little bit of a slipstream magnet. I do think Van Hoenack are just not quite comfortable with this circuit. And to be fair, a number of drivers, when I was spying down in the paddock in the practice sessions earlier in the week, a number of drivers were indicating they perhaps were not feeling as comfortable with this circuit, were able to find that consistency or that flow. And well, it looks like Van Hoenack here, unless he's able to put in a better lap time, which he's not looking as though he's improving. He's down in sectors 1 and 2. He crosses that timeline, and what's it going to be? It's not an improvement. Van Hoenack are really struggling here as he makes way around with 4 minutes to go plus his final lap. And we can see there in the Facebook chat, Baz Meacham saying that he found a couple more attempts out on circuit, but kept catching traffic, so pitted for the end of for the rest of the session. And well, we can see Meacham here parked in the pits, and that's confirmation, of course, from the man himself in the Facebook chat. But looking from him to his rival, who's trying to take away that provisional pole position. Well, Vessel's not able to find it that time around, and it is the case the two of them in a bit of a deadlock. Who is going to be on pole? We will wait and see with bated breath, as right now we have not long to go. And meanwhile, well, there is time out there, as Meach was saying, because Michael Price has just set the fastest sector of anybody in the LMP2 class in the final sector. So there is time out there, and that was a 15.59 versus at Baz Meacham's, what is, I believe, well, no, it's not going to be a 16.04 because that's when he came into the pits. My apologies for that, but it is the case that right now Price is pushing and looking to try and find that lap time as best he possibly can, as we're hearing that Richard Stanton's leaving the pit lane to put in one last ditch attack to try and get himself up from P9. And meanwhile, Paul Scott, who's currently parked in the pit line, I believe, is planning to start perhaps from the back of the field, or at least he's not able to take part in qualifying. There may be some technical issues in the car. But as we continue to see here, Price making his way down that back straight now, heading up towards the S's very shortly. Absolutely blistering pace shown by the LMP2s around here, of course, with their monstrous power. And as he makes his way into the right-hander here, it is the case. Well, can Price find a way to close that delta? As we see that Stefan Vessels improving to a 107.358, now 1,000th of a Baz Meacham. Can he go one step further? And well, it is Price who comes across that line. He improves to 107.5 flat, but it's not enough to gain a position. Meanwhile, with all that, it is the case that Tristan Di McGregor here making his way down the back straight, was the fastest in Sector 1 of anybody in the GT3. Sector 2, he's down on his previous best. This is looking quite a strong lap here as he makes his way on through. Does the South African good? He's got a little bit of traffic. I believe that's Kurt Van Hoenack just ahead. Will he be able to clear it? And Van Hoenack backs off, but Di McGregor there slightly compromised in his line in the switchback from the left into right. He crosses the timeline. It's not enough in the end. I think he may feel as though he just lost a little bit there going for the final couple of quarters. Unfortunate, but that's the way it goes. And to be fair, Van Hoenack gave him the space that was possible. But right now we look from them to that shootout for the LMP2 class pole. And well, we can see here it is the case that Stefan Vess was faster in what was that previous lap, but he's not improving this lap. He's going to have 2 more laps to try and swipe away that pole position for Baz Meacham. Will he be able to do it, however? I think right now he's setting himself up for the best possible lap. In terms of track space, how much space has he given himself out on track? Well, he's got the traffic of Davide Fabo ahead, but I'm sure Racing Team Astra will be on the radio between their drivers. to say, look, Vessels is coming on through, you need to give him the space, and as they make the way out, oh goodness me, and no, Vessels has to back out there. It is the case, but Fabo holds onto the racing line here, and whether it's a bit of miscommunication, alternatively Fabo is on a lap, either way, Vessels had to back out. He's going to have one more shot on the next lap, but we'll have to wait and see how it plays out. But meanwhile, we can see there, spun, that's Navarro Dabova, who's had a little bit of a turn for the worst, and as he spins the car around this time, it's the case P4, and I think that's going to be the best he's going to achieve in this qualifying session, so he's not quite up where he'd like to be compared to at Road Atlanta. It does seem as though Racing Team Astra have come on very strong today in the GT3 AM class, with Dino Brega and Goltieri there dominating compared to their peers by a margin of 3.5 tenths. But as we see Navarro Dabova getting back up to speed, he'll be coming into the pits at the end of this lap, no doubt about that. We do look to our drivers who are still out on circuit trying to put in laps, as we see Van Hernacker coming out of the pits. I think he's just trying to get a bit more track time. He won't be able to put in a lap. He's not got the time remaining to put in a lap. What about Davide Fabo? Well, he comes out the final corner to go on to a Lamborghini Huracan GT3 Evo driver, and as he comes on through here, well, this is going to be the last lap he'll be doing in this qualifying session. Can he improve from P9, which is a 1:16.5 within the GT3 AM class? He's half a second down on Mark Sykes, and well, it does seem as though the mid-engine rear-wheel drive cars, they have a lot of pace around here. But speaking of a lot of pace, it is the case that Paul Williams into the pits. We did have, well, he's just peeled into the pits. He wasn't improving that, but Paul Williams in the end coming on in. Well, what about Stefan Vessels by comparison here as he makes his way down the back straight? Well, I can tell you his Sector 1 was the fastest of anybody in the LMP2 class. Meanwhile, his Sector 2 not quite as good as he'd like it to be. It's all going to come down to Sector 3 if he's going to snatch this away. Nobody else really improved. Jim Stanton's improved in Sector 1, but it's not enough to see his overall lap time improve. Well, Vessels has got some traffic ahead. I think he's going to catch it in the final corner. We'll have to wait and see. Well, as I say, improved in Sector 1. He's the fastest of everybody in Sector 1, and he peels into the pits. He's had to abort, and well, that will mean that Baz Meacham takes that pole position by 1,000th in the end in the LMP2 class. Meanwhile, Jeremy Dabova here making his way through. He has secured pole position in the GT3 Pro class, and in the GT3 AM class, it is Tristan Dino Brega who has taken that pole position in the end, and not too far off of the top two in the GT3 Pro class, and Matthew Proutin or Jeremy Dabova. As we see here, Lucas Romano in the end is going to have to settle for P3 in class, and to be fair, I think he'll be happy with that, but it's going to be one of those situations whereby I wonder if there's a little bit of doubt creeping into the back of his mind with regards to the fact that it was the RP Motorsports PRO-AM show for the first 2 rounds, and now the competition really does seem to be on, or at least here at Mosport, as we like to call it in short, as he makes his way at the timeline here, and that will bring to a close this qualifying session with the checker flag out, the checker flag waving there, and everybody has completed their qualifying laps. As he makes his way on around right now, Lucas Romano here and everyone in the pit lane. The big talking points, well, again, in the LMP2 AM class, how close it was, and indeed across the GT3s, that spread of those lap times. But let's take you then, ladies and gentlemen, through the grid in preparation for race number 1. Well, in the end, it looks as though, because again, this replay file does not take into account track limit violations on laps. Stefan Vessels in the end actually took the pole position in the LMP2 AM class by only 0.08 ahead of Baz Meacham when all the lap times are considered. So it's Racing Team Astra Blues driver on pole with Baz Meacham alongside him in P2. Very close there, and the BRM driver will be looking to come back strong in the race. At the start of this race, the Welshman will be gunning for it. Paul Williams will start off our second row there for Team Tetrarouge, a 10th of Baz Meacham, and it'll be the case that Michael Price there, P4 for Excite Racing. Row number 3 goes to Jim Stanton. He'll be starting off the privateer with Sam Holman from Hollerton Racing alongside. And then we have row 4 made up of Jonathan Collins, the privateer. Alongside him will be MRC teams Jack Wyborn in P8. And then Richard Stanton, last but not least of our qualifying LMP2 drivers, with Paul Scott starting from the back of the field, or I believe from the pit lane, unless I'm very much mistaken. But the privateer of Richard Stanton there, P9. It's then on P10 and on the 5th row as well, Jeremy Dabova there, the pole position driver in the GT3 Pro class, and the challenge by DB1 driver putting in a brilliant qualifying performance, able to just outpace Matthew Proutin there for Eclipse Racing. Starts off our 6th row in P11, and alongside him will be Tristan Dino Brega, our pole position man in the GT3 AM class there from Racing Team Astra Blue. Behind them then, as we look to row at number 7, it will be Lorenzo Goldieri from Racing Team Astra Orange, and he will be joined by Lucas Romano, the GT3 Pro driver there, joining the GT3 AM driver, Lucas Romano for RP Motorsports PRO-AM. DDD Valaming and James Slates there will be starting us off in what is the 8th row, with the challenged by DB1 driver just outpacing the RP Motorsports PRO-AM driver. And then on row number 9, it'll be Sean Scooter from Racing Team Astra Blue. The last but not least are GT3 Pro qualifying drivers, and the Racing Team Astra Blue driver will be joined by challenged by DB2's Navarro over there having a difficult qualifying session. And then it'll be behind them, Elwin Sykes, the Racing Team Astra Orange driver, who starts off our 10th row. And the South African will be joined by the Dutchman of Arjun Craig there from Team Racing Netherlands in what is P20. And then starting off our 11th row is Kurt van Hoenacker from challenged by DB2. And he is joined by Mark Sykes from NXTGEN Racing with Sam Cases UK P22. Davide Fabo and Chris Keaton make up our 12th row, the Racing Team Astra Orange driver, just ahead of the MRC team driver. And then behind them it will be Paul Scott, who will be starting from the back of the field. In fact, I don't think he's made it. I do wonder where it's the case of some technical issues there for Paul Scott. But with that, we now do look to our drivers here as we have taken you through the grid. We've got 24 drivers taken to the circuit, and it is the case that we are currently in the formation lap for the person. In fact, Paul Scott jumping to the pits. He's having a pit lane start for a given reason, but it is the case we are now building up to what is the sprint race here, the opening race of tonight's proceedings. So you can see there from the blimp camera all of our GT3 drivers in their pack making their way around. Of course, Jeremy DeWover guiding them around here. The lead driver, they're starting in that P10 position, overall leader of the GT3 Pro class there in the GT3s. And then at the head of the field, as they make their way down through turn number 3 behind the safety car, we can see Stefan Vessels there from Racing Team Astra Blue. He has lined up on pole position, and alongside him Baz Meacham. And when they go racing, it will be the case that Meacham will be trying to go around the outside into turn 1, and will Vessels be ready to hold him off to stop Meacham from getting the inside into turn 2. We will have to wait and see. It'll be 15 minutes of racing here at the Canadian Tire Motorsports Park, and well, fantastic racing lies ahead, we predict, as we are only moments away now from going racing for 15 minutes. As we say hello there in what is the chat to Supreme World in the Twitch chat. Also, we say hello to Elwin Elbit80 Sykes in the YouTube chat, and also Stefan Vessels. And as all drivers make their way down, we say hello to Richard Stanton as well in the YouTube chat. Great to see so many of you tuning in, whether you're drivers who took part in this race on Wednesday, or these races I should say on Wednesday, or casual viewers. It's great to see your eclectic mix join us here tonight. And well, as we are now only moments away from going racing, it will be the case that it's going to be 15 minutes of frantic action. Who can keep their head? Who can keep their cool? Who can keep their consistent? We will find out. And could we see some drivers come from the back of the field to pick up some huge points, such as Mark Sykes here, starting P9 in the GT3 AM class? Can he find his way through and just stay clear of potential carnage? We will find out only a moment's time. But we look to the front of the field here, where we Stefan Vessels, who takes us away very shortly for the sprint. It's lights out and away we go for the sprint race here at Motorsport as they make their way down to turn 1, and Vessel's getting a very good start. Then Paul Williams immediately up the inside, and there's contact with Baz Meacham on the opening corner, and with them that's Collins who's into the wall, also one of the Stanton family members. Goodness me, it's all kicked off. That's not Collins into the wall with him, my apologies. Collins is in P2 as we see over there in the distance. That's Richard Stanton, and also with him that's Sam Holman, both taking a tour to the grass. My goodness, the LMP2 class has had drama already. Meanwhile, the GT3 scythe their way through. Jeremy DeBove's had no such trouble as he makes his way through turn number 3 here and holds on to lead as they make their way down towards turn number 5. But my goodness, there's been a lot of trouble on the start of this race. And meanwhile, making their way through Moss Corner is Michael Price from Excite Racing, who's got past Jack Wyborn, who's going very slowly. And I'm already hearing that Collins has come to jump into the pits with damage to the car. But as we see all our GT3 drives there in the background, we pan to them, and it's the case that Jeremy DeWover getting that good start, but you can see he's now got Matthew Proutin on the offensive, because they make their way down this back straight here. Of course, that slipstream, and the BMW M4 not quite as strong as the Mercedes on the straights, but that slipstream will negate that weakness as they make their way into the Essence for the first time of asking under race conditions. Jeremy DeWover here feeling a little bit of pressure as behind them Tristan Dino Bregas having a fantastic start in the GT3 AM class. He's held position very nicely and got himself a nice gap to his pursuers within the AM class, and it is the case that right now Navarro DeWover, who is trying to find his way up the order rather rapidly, well, we can see here Navarro DeWover up into P2. He's gained 2 places on the opening lap and is pushing on at quite a rate here to try and gain more ground and hunt down Dino Brega. He will not want to finish too far behind, as we're hearing that Paul Williams also into the pits, and Collins into the pits as well. And it has been an absolutely chaotic start to this race, as for the LMP2 drivers in particular, as they now make their way around. Everyone seems to calm things down to a degree. And Lorenzo Galtieri into the wall there. That's coming out of turn number 2 and up onto his roof and flips over. And goodness me, well, Galtieri, who's right up towards the front of the GT3 AM class, has had a disastrous start. But meanwhile, I said, watch out for him. And look at this. Mark Sykes, since the start of the race, has already gained 3 places in class on the opening lap and is continuing to gain. As meanwhile, Arjun Craig has found his way past Navarro de Bova. It's all happening here in the GT3s. They make the way on down, and Galtieri, from what I'm hearing, has had a further off, and I think it may be a jump to the pits in the near future. As we can see, it's the case that Arjun Craig has found his way past Navarro de Bova. Can he keep the youngster behind him, the Dutchman versus the Belgians? They make the way into the S's. He can this time around, but as they've flown through the right into left, we'll have to wait and see whether that story's the same when they go on to another lap, because they make the way through right now. As we hear that Baz Meacham has jumped to the pits. It has been a disaster for Meacham with that battle with Paul Williams. I think both drivers there will be kicking themselves for the contact, but also thinking whose fault is it. And we're going to see Dabova here make his way out the inside, and I think it might be the case that Kregel there simply letting him on through. I wonder if there's a bit of a slowdown involved there, as we see Kregel trying to come back at him into turn number 2, but not able to find that inside line that we saw Matt Caruana in the Apex Racing Academy lobby. He was so aggressive down there. He could find the grip on the inside into turn 2, but no such success for the Dutchman of Kregel as they make their way out of turn 3 and now down towards Moss Corner at turn number 5 once again. As they come charging on down and head all the way up in towards that braking zone for Moss. You can see there the road boat just taking a bit of grass into turn, turning way too early into the apex. We ride on board here with Arjun Craig, the 2 drivers both in the Ferrari 488 GT3 Evo, of course, and Kregel here, I think, feeling as though he's got the pace to take the fight to the championship leader in the GT3 AM class. They make their way down the back straight, but the thing is, of course, here for Kregel, he needs to time this pass right, because if he doesn't time it right, then it is the case that Navarro is just going to come back, and he needs to find an advantage as they make the way down into turn number 8 here. And you can see Navarro just not comfortable. The car's understeer. I think he's not in the zone yet. He has not found that consistency he wants, because he comes out of turn 9. You can see how Kregel, in fact, is actually having to lift off a little bit. He cannot carry all the momentum he wants up to turn 10. And as they make the way out of the corner, that's where Dabova breaks away. But it's because Kregel's got this, he's settled in, and right now he needs to go on the offensive, because if Dabova finds his rhythm, I think it's going to be the case the two of them will equalise out as they roll on down through turn number 2 here. But whilst this has been happening, I can also tell you that a bit further up the road, we do have a new leader in what is the LMP2 class, and that is Price. Michael Price is now into the lead. Now, if you're wondering what's happened to Stefan Vessels, he had an off track earlier on lap number 3, and that's cost him dearly, dropped him down to P3. He's found his way past Sam Holman, and here is the racing team Astra Blue driver who put it on pole in qualifying. Well, he's made one mistake, it's cost him dearly, and now he's got it all to do again in terms of hunting after Price, who's just set the fastest lap of the race, a 107.39, and well, that means Price is not wasting any time here as Vessels sets a personal best of 107.7, but it is right now Vessels who's got to go on the hunt here, because he has not got long. He's got 10 minutes, which sounds a long time. I can assure you, in this type of race, it's definitely not a long time. With Price's pace, he's got to get going before it's the case that the going gets tough, because Vessels, the longer this goes on, the more Price is going to settle into a rhythm. But as they make the way down here into turn number 5, we do look back to the GT3s, and well, we are hearing that Mark Sykes is continuing his crusade up through the GT3 AM class. He's now up to P5. He's found a way past Kurt Van Hoenacker, and now he's looking for that potential move on Elwin Sykes. As we ride on board the gearbox of Elwin Sykes, and remember, these two are not related, even though they share the same surname. And as they make the way out to turn 1 and up towards 2, we can see it's the case. Oh, goodness me, Mark Sykes trying to let Paul Williams through there by pulling off the racing line, but I think Williams and him wanted to tuck to the inside, and that's cost him very dearly. It's cost both drivers dearly as they make the way into turn number 3. And I think for Mark Sykes now, he's got a long way to go to try and close up. He's going to need a lap or 2 to bring that gap down as they make the way down to Moss Corner. You can see here Elwin Sykes just with a brief dab of the brake there, interesting enough, not having the confidence to flow the car on that inside line into turn 4. Understandable, because the car will be ejected out because the understeer over the rise and the fall. And as they make the way out on Moss Corner here, you can see that Mark Sykes has already closed up all the time he's lost. He's now only 7.5 tenths down as they make make the way down this back straight here, heading down the Andretti straight up towards the S's once again. A bit further back, you can see Kurt Van Hoenacker there, who does have behind him, that is the Racing Team Astra Blue driver, who, as we just get confirmation of who that is with the battle box, that is Sean Scudder, who's trying to gain some places. Sean Scudder is P5 and last of our GT3 Pros out on the circuit, although we do have quite a few more GT3 Pros. It's the case that only 5 of them are attending this sprint race and do believe the entire round. But as we see Kurt Van Hoenacker right now in P6, he's had a good start, to be fair. He's gained some places, but I think he'll want a few more than this. And talking about gaining places, Mark Sykes here now looking very aggressive versus Elwin Sykes as they make their way down through turn number 1. And well, I think he's going to be looking for it. Does he try and go up the inside into 2? He thinks about it, and Elwin Sykes gives him the space. And I think Mark Sykes had tried to carry a bit more speed, but on that tight line, started to understeer and had to snap the brakes on. Otherwise, he would have sent himself and Elwin Sykes over to the wall. But as he makes his way through turn number 3 right now, it is the case that Mark Sykes is coming on strong. We saw it in the season opener at Watkins Glen in the sprint, the pace he had, and he's showing it again today. He's showing these trace elements of what he can do, and as he makes his way down to Moss Corner, you can see, oh goodness me, and a car going so that's Galtieri, and Elwin Sykes gets it all sorts of wrong. I mean, it's a bit of miscommunication. I think Galtieri going slow there with a damaged Lamborghini, and Elwin Sykes thinking about diving up the inside, and at the last moment Galtieri sort of turning into the corner, and Mark Sykes in that position to capitalise. He's up to P4 and continuing to charge on through, and well, we know that the McLaren and the Audi both not the strongest on the straight here, and it's going to be the case that they're going to be about equal as they make the way into the S's. As they roll them through here, we look a bit further up, and Arjun Craig, who's been tucked in behind Navarro de Bova for quite some time, as we just passed the halfway point of this race. He hasn't been able to find a way through. Craig on that lap at 16.3, his personal best this race versus de Bova's 16.6. Meanwhile, Mark Sykes went 18.2, but to be fair, he's been battling for that P4 position. Mark Sykes' best lap by comparison of 16.9, so it's the case he's running about the same pace as both of these drivers here, so we'll have to wait and see how it plays out. But meanwhile, I can see in the battle for the GT3 Pro lead, Matthew Prouting here 9 tenths down on class leader, and that is Jeremy de Bova, who you can see that the background of the camera, he'll be the foreground as we turn round as they both pass through the panning shot, and as they make the way down the back straight here, Matthew Prouting not letting de Bova run away with things as they make their way down the straight. But meanwhile, hold up a second, what's happened to Tristan Dina Brega? He's gone off circuit. We can't bring you a replay of it, unfortunately, but he's got damage to the car, and Dina Brega into the wall there, and what was looking at a very comfortable lead. I'm not sure if it was contact with another driver, it's a mistake of his own. He's jumped to the pits, and what that now means is that Navarro de Bova is your leader in the GT3 AM class. Well, can he now hold on to that lead versus Arjun Craig? And well, we'll have to wait and find out. But it does seem as though they're just a mistake for Tristan Dino Brega has cost him what was a very, very assured 25 points. But again, we said at the start of this show, and we'll say again, this circuit takes no prisoners, and drivers are feeling that left, right and centre. And speaking of taking no prisoners, Kurt Van Hoenacker, who's now in P5, well, he wants a bit more. He wants to go for P4. But can he find a way past Elwin Sykes there as they make the way down into turn 1? He pulls off line now. I'm wondering if trying to get into the head of Elwin Sykes to say I'm going to go for a lunge. Oh no, I'm not. But to do it off there from such a distance, I think that might have just been a little bit too premature there, unless Van Hoenacker got a little bit of snap oversteer on power exit, and then to point the car towards the pit wall in order to be able to calm it down. But you can see there, Elwin Sykes goes deep, Van Hoenacker up the inside, but the way the corner sweeps through means that he can't quite get the move done. And as they make the way down towards turn number 5, it is the case that we can see they roll on down the hill. Van Hoenacker looking very strong, but can he find a way on through that Mercedes AMG power? If he can nail it out of Moss Corner here, that V8 will do very well versus the bi-turbo V8 of the McLaren. It's got the straight line punch here, and well, he has got the LMP2 driver of Holman coming on through, and that will disrupt a little bit of flow for Van Hoenacker. And I think Van Hoenacker's a bit too far back to capitalise this time around. But we look from him to the battle for the lead of the GT3 AM class here. Two Ferraris going toe to toe, two good friends and rivals, and that is Arjun Craig versus Navarro de Bova here as they make their way through 5 minutes this race remaining as they roll them through the final corner, and as they come charging down towards turn number 1. Once again, it is the case that neither driver willing to give in. But meanwhile, we look from them to Paul Williams here, who after coming out the pits much like Jack Wyborn in front of him, both drivers having that disastrous start to the race in the LMP2 class. I can assure you there is some battling to go, and well, this is the battle for P6, and both drivers with wounded cars looking at, well, they've had them repaired, now they're looking to go racing once again. We will wait and see where it develops. And I can tell you that also Stefan Vessels has brought that gap between himself and Michael Price, the race leader of the class. That gap is now down to 1.5 seconds, and it is closing gradually. We could have a battle for the win on the final couple of laps. laps, depending on how it plays out. But as we see at Paul Williams here, we also see a little bit further up the road, we look to our leader here, and this is Michael Price right now, having to navigate his way through the GT3 pack. But I think Stefan Vessels has been held up a little bit at Moss Corner and has lost out to a degree as they make the way on around, and as they come charging on down, it is the case that we can see, well, Vessels there finding a bit of traffic. That was Davide Fabo who peels out the way, and I think Vessels here will be hoping he can clear what is that battle for the GT3 Pro class, lead in front of him with Browning and DeBover as soon as possible, because right now it's holding him up very heavily, and Paul Williams has had a spin there at turn number 2, which means he's lost out in the hunt for what is Wyborn in P6, and Paul Williams, I think, will be relegating himself now to P7 if he can get the car back underway. Oh, goodness me, that's Browning just coming sideways through the picture there, saying, if you don't mind if I get a bit of camera time. Well, it is the case that Browning getting it somewhere wrong, coming through turn number 2 and sliding on into our view, and he's down to P4 now. Such was how close the GT3 Pros were as he makes his way back up to speed, and meanwhile, Navarro DeBover here, well, he's still got Arjun Craig hunting him down, and my goodness, if you couldn't have unpredictability, it is the case that this circuit is proven ever more unpredictable with 3 minutes to go, and well, it's anyone's guess how it's all going to end. I think Jeremy DeBover is comfortably in the lead of the GT3 Pro class, but can the father and son both bring a win home? They tried it at Road Atlanta, they weren't able to do it in the feature race, but meanwhile, we look from our GT3 driver here to Richard Stanton, who is in P4, and right now, well, I believe that is Baz Meacham trying to find his way on through, so Meacham just simply trying to get himself off of a lap down of his peers. Where we look from Richard to Jim Stanton, who is hunting down Jack Wyborn here, and the gap's 1.3 seconds. I think it is going to happen again. It's going to need a lap or two to set up here to get close enough, but you never know, never say never, as they make the way down turn number 4 and in towards 5. But the gaps have opened up a little bit within the LMP2 class, indeed across our classes. We see there Wyborn going for a spin, going through Moss Corner, just a bit wide there onto the gravel, I think, and losing the rear as a result. And Wyborn now down to P6, Jim Stanton up to P5. He gets back to racing Wyborn for Team MRC, and well, we hear that Paul Williams is into the pits. That will be his race done and dusted, I believe, and it will be a P8 for him when all is said and done. But meanwhile, as they make the way on around here, we do look back towards our leaders who are coming through the shot here, down the back straight, down the Andretti straight, and I can tell you that Michael Price right now is feeling the pressure of having Stefan Vessels closing in on him, because right now the Racing Team Astra Blue driver, who had that pole lap by a small margin over Baz Meacham, well, he is now pushing no the way. He's giving it everything he's got to try and take that win. There's going to be 2 more laps here as they make the way onto what for them is lap number 13. They've just got about enough time to squeeze in a 14th lap, and right now can Vessels find a way on through? That was the fastest lap of the race, a 106.8 versus Price's fastest personal best, which was a 107.2, and you can see that Vessels absolutely hammering the cars. We ride on board here at Vessels to give you an idea of how rapidly he's pushing on through, and indeed there 55 Damien 55 in the YouTube chat, you can see the LMPs. You're riding on board with second place man in the LMP2 class, Stefan Vessels, as he makes his way into Moss Corner here and is trying to hunt down that opportunity of taking the win with only 1 more lap to go after this. I can also tell you that Arjun Craig on the GT3 AM class has had an off that's promoted Mark Sykes to P2 and let Navarro DeBover run off into the distance, but right now we focus our attention here, so I think this is where the final battle will be as they make the way down this back straight, and will 1 more lap to go, and will Vessels giving it everything within his power here, but has he got anything in reserve to try and get Price right at the end, or will he try and get Price to make a mistake? Will Price feel that pressure and make a tiny error as they just come around to go on to their 14th and final lap? The next time they come around, the checkered flag will be waving. This time it's the white flag, but next time it's the checkered one, and as they make the way on through this time, well, the 2 of them just seem inseparable. As we see Paul Williams coming out the pits there in P8, he'll be classified for the reverse grid, no doubt, but as they make the way through, Price here looking comfortable for the time being. And in terms of where the gap is being closed up, it is in sector 1 where Price is struggling by comparison. He's losing 4/10 of a second a lap in sector 1. Otherwise, the 2 of them are practically equal across the rest of the lap, and you can see that here in the body language of the cars, where Vessels closes up through sector 1. But now as they come out of Moss Corner and make their way down the back straight, it is the case that Price holding on as they roll down towards what is the final couple of corners. They got a lot of traffic ahead of them, though. This could hurt Price. He has got the traffic jam to deal with Galtieri, and then it's going to be, I think that's Wyborn and also Elwin Sykes as they make the way down towards the final couple of corners here. But I think Price has got enough in hand. He'll be comfortable. He'll probably back it off through the final couple of corners to be safe, because he makes way over. It's going to be very close. He's got that traffic right at the end here, but I think he's done enough as he comes out the final corner It will be Michael Price, who is your winner in the sprint in the LMP2 class, ahead of Stefan Vessels by a minor margin, but one all the same. And as they come on through, it will be Sam Holman in the end who wraps up the LMP2 AM podium as he makes his way around, and Holman recovering this race to P3, and then a brilliant recovery drive from him as he crosses the line. And then in the GT3 Pro class, as he makes his way through the last couple of corners, well, he's led this one from start to finish. He's held off the charge from Matthew Prouty, and as he comes through the final corner, it will be Jeremy DeBoer from the Challenge by DB1 who takes the win in the sprint for the GT3 Pro class. A brilliant drive there from the Mercedes driver, and as he crosses the line, it'll be Lucas Romano who finishes P2. He'll be pleased with that, the RP Motorsports PRO-AM driver, and in P3 will be Davide Fabo as he crosses the line, but as he makes his way on through. Meanwhile, it is going to be a father and son win because Navarro DeBoer, the younger member of the DeBoer family, takes the win in the GT3 AM class, and it has finally happened where they've both taken a win in a race together, and the Challenge by TB2 team will be very proud of that. Mark Sykes then crosses the line, P2, having started P9 in the class. He's come all the way out to be on the podium. Next Gen Racing with Sam Casey's UK driver, and Arjun Craig in the end just not able to get back at him for P2, finishing P3, and then the Team Racing Netherlands driver making that critical error which cost him so dearly right at the end of the race. But a fantastic race, no doubt, from start to finish. A lot of unpredictability, and if that is any indicator of what's going to happen in the feature, my goodness, well, it will not be over until the end of the 60 minutes, I can tell you that, as in we will be seeing movements all the way down to the very last moment. But as they all make their way around right now on their cool-down lap, you can see here it is the case. They come down the back straight. Well, I think father and son trying to unite up on the road, and also got Davide Fabo there, also trying to get in all the Challenge by DB1 and 2 team drivers there coming together. And well, what a proud moment for the father and son as they make their way down the back straight here. They'll be very pleased with this. Both winners in their respective classes here in the sprint. Can they make it 2 out of 2? Of course, that will be the big question. But right now, I think they'll be reveling in this moment. It was denied from them at Road Atlanta. Tristan Dino Brega taking that win in the feature in the GT3 AM class with 10 minutes to go. He took Navarro DeBoer, but today he dropped it in the race, and we're hearing there in the chat that there was contact with a pro class driver due to netcode. The collision occurred, and that sent Dino Brega into the wall and broke his steering, which is very unfortunate, and I'm sorry to hear that. But of course, we could see Dino Brega come back very strong in the sprint. We do know that he loves to come strong in the feature, I should say. He's not one to give up, so we'll have to wait and find out. But a brilliant race, and well, let's bring you, ladies and gentlemen, those race results after all classification as our drivers make their way into the pit lane. So in the end, our race results subject to any stewards' inquiries, and these are the overall results in the end. Michael Price, your winner overall and in the LMP2 Pro class by only half a second ahead of Stefan Vessels in the end, and Sam Holman in P3 completing the LMP2 podium, I should say. Then Richard Stanton P4 and Jim Stanton, fellow family member, P5, Jack Wyborn P6. Then we have the first of our GT3s, and that is Jeremy DeBoer there, who took the win in the GT3 Pro class P7 ahead of Lucas Romano and Davide Fabo, the 2 drivers there wrapping up the GT3 Pro podium. Matthew Prouting just behind, and then Navarro DeBoer in P11 overall, our winner in the GT3 AM class. Jonathan Collins between him and Mark Sykes there. Mark Sykes and Arjun Craig battling for P2 in the GT3 AM class. But it is Mark Sykes who finished ahead of Arjun Craig, and then Kurt Van Hoenack and Elwin Sykes completing the GT3 AM top 5, with Davide Fabo and Chris Keaton behind them. And as we look further down the order, we can see there is the case that Tristan Dino Brega, after that incident, dropping down to P19 overall, and that being a P8 in the class, and he'll be looking to come back in the feature race. We have Paul Williams there at P20, completing our top 20 after a difficult race for the LMP2 Team Tetra Rouge driver. Lorenzo Galtieri with a disastrous start, finishing P21, 3 laps down. James Slate P22, Sean Scott P23, and then Baz Meacham and Paul Scott completing the standings there. Paul Scott not taken to the circuit due to technical issues with the car. Well, that is race number 1, ladies and gentlemen, of what is round number 3 for the IMB Raceway Lobby of the Next Gen Racing PROTO GT3 Championship. And well, we will be back in approximately 8 minutes time for the build up to the feature race, the 60-minute race, which will kick off at 9 o'clock this evening, but we'll be bringing you the build up coverage from 5 to 9. Don't go anywhere, you won't want to miss it. We'll see you shortly.
Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, we are back for the build-up to the feature race. That's race number 2 tonight at the Canadian Tire Motorsports Park in round number 3 of the NXTGEN Racing PROTO GT3 Championship. Of course, this Lobby 2 being brought to you in collaboration with IMB Racewear, the premier place to go to at imbRacewear.com if you're looking to pick up sim racing or real-world racing apparel, whether it be shoes, gloves or team wear such as tops, so wear shirts and also trousers and things along those lines. They're the people to go to if you are looking for the ultimate in sim and real racing wear. But as we look ahead now to the feature race, it's only moments away, approximately just under 5 minutes away. You can imagine that it's going to be one of those situations now where a lot of drivers will have some concerns on their mind. They will be worried potentially about some potential mistakes that could creep in, and we saw it from multiple drivers in the sprint. Drivers such as Baz Beecham and also Paul Williams coming together on the opening lap, not just the collision between the two of them, but also drivers such as Lorenzo Galtieri, who seems to have a very difficult start to the proceedings in the sprint race, in the end finishing well out of position where he wanted to be by comparison, and also the one driver who really was the biggest claimant of in terms of having a disastrous race, and that was Tristan Di Nobrega there, who with that contact with one of the GT3 Pro drivers, as we've been informed, saw him into with a broken steering rack, and in the end having to finish the race right at the back of the GT3 AM class. But of course, I do believe it may be the case he might be starting right at the front of the GT3s, given the reverse grid. If he qualified for it, we'll have to wait and find out. But it is one of those situations right now where for a lot of drivers, they will be literally digging in deep, thinking about what can they do going into race number 2. Because of course, it is the case we have the 2 races that are worth the same amount of points. It's not as though the feature race, which is 4 times longer, is worth 4 times the points of the sprint. Oh no, it's the case they're worth exactly the same. And that means if you don't win in the sprint, you can still win big in the feature. And well, it'll be the case that Di Nobrega for sure will be looking to try and achieve that. But in return, could we see one of his main rivals here, Navarro de Bova, of course, the changed by DB2 driver, could we see him
return to that form, of course, of picking up back-to-back wins. Will he be able to? We'll have to find out. He picked up a win in the sprint. Can he pick up a win in the feature? We will soon find out. And of course, for Jeremy DeBova, the father of the family, will he as well be able to make it 2 wins out? So at least 2 podium finishes, that will be his target. All that and more within the next 2.5 minutes. We will begin to find out the story there. And also some drivers we didn't talk about, but we do see him making their way around on the circuit again. Chris Keaton here, the MRC team driver, who are having a reasonable performance in the sprint, albeit not quite up there. He'll be looking to try and stay out of trouble in the feature and pick up some good points, and that's what it's all about. And the best embodiment of that, Mark Sykes in the Audi R8 there, as he does a little bit of a drift coming through turn 2. Started P9, made his way all the way up to 2nd place. And then, of course, there was a number of drivers dropping it. He had to say that fortune was on his side, but sometimes that's what it's all about. A bit of lady luck, plus also consistency could take you a long way. And, of course, Arjun Craig, who was, of course, finished P2, finished P3 behind Mark Sykes, would argue that it was the case, that he should have been P2 if it were not for a silly mistake. But whilst we are waiting for proceedings to tick over, we do look to the chat here, and we do say hello there to Damien, who we did address earlier on, but we say hello to Damien formally. We also say hello to K-Teams there in the Facebook chat, and that's Damien in the YouTube chat, I should say, as well as K-Teams in the Facebook chat, who congratulated Michael Price, Jeremy DeBova and Navarro DeBova on their wins. Also in the Twitch chat there, Elwin Sykes, and saying, wow, being a driver in this series, you don't see all the action. Great stream, looking forward to the feature, and the Lambo boys were really battling here. Well, indeed, it is one of those cases. I know how you feel there, Mr. Sykes. When you are a sim racing driver, a real world driver, you don't get to see all the action that happens in the race. You only get to see your localized drama in action, but when you look back at it and see everything that happened, my goodness, so much can happen outside of your field of view. I'm glad to hear that you're enjoying the broadcast and looking forward to the feature. We can also see and say hello there to Darren Dottley, saying good evening, Paul. I hope you're keeping well. Let's see how this pans out, and indeed, I hope you're keeping well, Darren. And well, indeed, it's going to be a very interesting feature to see how it all plays out. And we can see it, Tristan Dino Brega there, back and forth messaging with Jeremy DeBova in the YouTube chat, talking about what happened in the sprint, and it being one of those things. Indeed, it can happen just as much in real world racing. You can be right on form, and then through no fault of your own, there's an incident which sees you lose all those critical points, all that hard work you put in, just completely disintegrates in a brief moment. It's how you come back from it that defines you as a race, and I do know that Tristan Dino Brega will come back very strong here. We have seen it already in the opening 2 rounds. If he has a bad performance in one session, it doesn't faze him. As we look around further up the order and to Sean Scudder in terms of the GT3 Pro driver here, who after a very difficult sprint race, he loses the rear end into turn 2, and so many drivers struggling with turn 2, particularly the mid-engine rear-wheel drive drivers, and by comparison, to be fair, Lucas Romano making it look a little bit easier in the front-engine rear-wheel drive BMW M4. Who will drop it through turns 2 and 3, particularly turn 2, we'll have to wait and see, as this final warm-up session is now complete. And will very shortly be setting the grid for the purposes of race number 2, that feature. Now, of course, we can't take you quite through the grid because our grid is a bit disorganized at the moment, so we will wait for the grid to form, and when our drivers start to make their way on around, that's when we'll break that grid down for you as best as we possibly can and try to give you that overall classification as we see all of our drivers are lining up here, and will that grid gradually be informed as we do look towards the front, and a very distant blimp camera here, the blimp not quite towards the start-finish line. So as a result, we'll jump away from the blimp camera because we would like to see our drivers a little bit closer up, and we can see here much closer up all of our LMP 2 class drivers, of course, starting ahead of the GT3 class drivers, and they will pull away approximately 2 seconds away. That's how they'll all start apart, and that's where they'll be going racing from as they get ready to go racing in due order. And as they get ready to go racing, of course, we can see here it is the case that with that reverse grid, that will throw quite a spanner in the works for some drivers. Of course, some drivers who didn't quite have the race in the sprint they wanted, they may have an opportunity to score some major points. Whereas those drivers who may not have the pace but have the consistency, it could also be a good opportunity for them as well. But we bring you the overall grid then when it very shortly gets reset, and we should see everybody pull away as we do see then. So it is going to be the case that it is Paul Williams who lines up on the front row alongside Jonathan Collins in the LMP 2 class. They'll be starting together on the front row. Then it's Jack Wyborn and Jim Stanton on row number 2. With Richard Stanton and also Sam Holman behind them on row number 3. The privateer of Richard Stanton and Hollerton Racing's Sam Holman there in a P6. And
And then we do have as they all make their way around the corner of the circuit right now under this manual double file formation lap. It is going to be Stefan Vessels who starts behind them, starting off what is our full throw, and with Baz Meacham alongside the South African there, the Welshman. And of course, these two will be looking to go racing very fast and furiously. And there will be Michael Price who starts right at the back here as they make their way up towards turn number 3. We then do have in the reverse gridded GT3 class Tristan Dino Brega there, who will be starting right at the front. He was classified for the purposes of the reverse grid, and well, this could be a huge opportunity for the racing team Astra Blue driver to try and run off into the distance with this one if he can keep his cool, with Elwyn Sykes there alongside him. And then behind them it will be Davide Fabo. It's a bit of a racing team Astra lockout on that front row and the row behind, but Arjun Craig is there as well. And as they make the way on down here, we can see Kurt Van Hoornacker. Well, I do wonder with that, there might be a little bit of mix-up. I think there might be a small mix-up because Arjun Craig was classified as P3 in the class, but I'm not 100% sure what's happened there. It might just be where they're all interweaving, but I can tell you that Arjun Craig and Kurt Van Hoornacker there, I think they may change in a second. Navarro de Bova there as well, and Mark Sykes is going to be alongside him on what is the 8th row as they make the way on around. And then we can see on row number 9, it will be Didi Di Blaming starting P17 with Matthew Prouting in P18 there, the two GT3 Pro drivers, and then it will be Lucas Romano who starts ahead of Jeremy DeBova according to classification on what is row number 20 as they make the way on down. And then it will be Lorenzo Goldieri who starts on what is our 11th row and alongside James Slates, and then making their way on that final row it will be Sean Scudder, who was not classified for the reverse grid, and Chris Keaton, who is going to be starting from the pit lane by his lonesome, but this may be a bit of a smart move. He'll be trying to take the safe approach to the start of this race. But we now look back to the drivers right at the front of the field, and that will be our LMP2 drivers with Paul Williams about to take us away for 60 minutes of racing. And it's lights out and away we go then for race number 2 here, and immediately going on the offensive. They're going around the outside. Is that Jim Stanton with an absolutely colossal run? The privateers wasted no time there, and both Paul Williams and also Collins were very slow at the start by comparison, and Stanton with literally the daylight robbery up into the lead before they've even passed the first corner. My goodness. Now, if that's not a contender of the season, I don't know what is, as they make their way through turn number 3 here, and you can see by comparison Stefan Vessels and Baz Meacham battling side by side as they roll their way down towards turn number 5, and as they come down the hill, Baz Meacham backing out there, and Jack Wyborn trying to look for an opportunity versus the BRM driver, but he can't quite find it right now as they all settle into order. Meanwhile, in the GT3 class, I can tell you that Tristan Neo Brega having a very good start. The racing team Astra Blue driver breaking away gradually from Davide Fabo already, and I think it is the case that he'll be looking to try and build as much the gap as possible. Moss Favo and also Elwyn Sykes there just focus on their respective race. I think there might be a little bit of teamwork going on in order just to build up that momentum early in the race for all 3 drivers. As we can see there, very little has occurred in the GT3 class since the start. Everyone in line astern here as they make their way down the back straight. Everyone keeping their cool and staying out of trouble as they make their way on down in towards what is turn number 8 into the S's. But we look from them to right up at the head of the pack right now, the LMP2 class here. We can see Sam Holman up on the inside of what is Stefan Vessels there. Vessels trying to make the move for P5, but Holman saying no and defending, but Vessels looks the inside again, but he hasn't quite got the braking technique there to get up the inside. He's not close enough either, to be fair. And as they make the way out to 2, he's going to try and look round now. He's going to try and go around the outside as Vessels, but will he be able to find his way around the outside here versus Holman? I don't think so for now, but Holman definitely feeling a lot of pressure here. The Hollerton Racing driver versus Racing Team Astra Blues Vessels. They make the way down through 4 and into 5, but to be fair, Holman keeping that pressure at bay for now, and I wonder whether Baz Meacham will try and get himself involved in this battle as they go a little bit further around the lap, and whether he's just witnessing this one, because as they come down this back straight here, it does look as though Meacham not pushing too hard, and to be fair, there is a sizable amount of fuel saving that our LMP2 class drivers do need to do here. They do need to put some fuel saving effort in, because otherwise they may find themselves having to make a second stop, as we see here Jack Wyborn on the outside versus what is there Michael Price making his first move of the race here. Michael Price gained the position and now up into PA, and he'll be looking to try and go after Meacham next as they make the way through the right-hander to complete another lap. But as they come on through, we look to the GT3s and we can see Elwyn Sykes trying to go up the inside of Davide Fabo for P2 in the GT3 AM class as they roll into the S's here. Fabo's not going to be battling his teammate, who goes a little bit deep into the corner, and Kurt Van Hoornacker says, don't mind if I do, and Fabo falling down the order like a stone as a result of running wide there at turn number 8, and well, Jeremy DeBova now says, don't mind if I do as well. We've literally You've got Fabo. Well, it is the case that Davide Fabo is falling down the order very rapidly here, and I think that is a little bit of an aggravation. I do wonder where he's not too happy about the fact he found himself on the outside there as they make the way through turn number 1. As they roll him through the corners this time, we can see Prowse in for Eclipse Racing as he makes his way down into turn number 2. Well, he has made some gains, and he's still in P4 in the GT3 Pro class, but he is gradually hunting the back of what is Lucas Romano as we look from them up to Richard Stanton here, who is trying to go on the offensive versus John Collins as they make the way, or Jonathan Collins in full, as they make the way down towards turn number 8, and it's the case that Stanton not able to find a way through, trying to go outside to inside there, but Collins blocking him off at last moment, which is allowed to do, and as they make the way out of turn number 9 up into 10, no change between these two, but meanwhile Paul Williams and Jim Stanton are both being allowed to run away with things at the front of the pack. So as they come down in towards the right hander here of turn number 1, it is the case that we can see Richard Stanton runs a bit wide. He brings the car back onto the circuit, but that's going to be another place game for Stefan Vessels, who's moved past also Sam Holman, I should tell you. He has found a way past Holman. And now Holman will need to try and find a way to get past Richard Stanton, but he's not found that place. And as a result, I think Stanton now tries to get the momentum back up the order. Well, Cam Holman now find a way on through because Baz Meacham just tucked in behind here, playing a little bit of a witness to all of everything that's happening. And as they come on through, we can see here Navarro de Bova up the inside of Elwin Sykes, a P2 in the GT3 AM class. And well, Navarro de Bova wasting no time in going hunting after Tristan Di Nobrega, who is 7 seconds up the road and is absolutely flying. Now, if we use qualifying form as an indicator and also sprint race form as an indicator, I think Di Nobrega will open that gap up further versus de Bova. I think Navarro de Bova will focus on P2 at first and see if he can inch his way into this race a bit later on. But meanwhile, with all that happening, Sam Holman still battling with Richard Stanton and not able to find a way through at this time. But it does look as though right now it's a bit of a patience game forming here as we ride on board with Michael Price in P8 in the LMP2 class, and he's trying to find a way past what is Baz Meacham as they roll for the right-hander. Jack Wyvon into the pit lane. I think there's some damage to that car. He's going for a very early pit stop if not, but I think it might be the case that he's got some damage he needs to get rid of. And off the circuit there, that is Chris Keaton, the GT3 Amdro, who started from the pit lane. He's not having a good start to his race, only 5 minutes in, as our driver's rolling through the corners here, and we continue to watch Michael Price, who's just not able to find a way on through. But whilst all this is happening, I can tell you that Paul Williams has found his way into the lead of the LMP2 class. We can only be in so many places at once, and I can tell you that Paul Williams right now, whilst everything's going on further back in his class, has very suddenly found his way all the way down towards what is turn number 8 here. And as they come right on down, with Stanton going very slowly by comparison. In fact, that gap has opened up quite a bit. I wonder if Jim Stanton's had a little bit of an off. I'm not seeing anything on my screen to say he's had a major off, but it is the case as he goes very slowly into turn 2. I wonder if there's a problem with that car because he's going very slowly, and I think Stanton's peeling into the pit. Something has gone wrong, and in fact, looking at the front right side, I think that is a crumpled front end. I think he's had a hit with the wall, and that means that Stefan Vessels now up into P2. Paul Williams is your race leader, and I think Vessels now will go hunting as ferociously as he can as they make the way onto another lap. But behind Jonathan Collins, we can see Richard Stanton here in P4, and he's trying to break away from the pursuing pack of Holman, Meacham and Price as they make the way through turn number 2 and down towards 3 here in the battle for P5 in the LMP2 class. Now as they come roaring on through the right-hander turn 3 this time around, no real moves kicking off, but meanwhile in the GT3 class I can tell you it is all happening, because right now it is the case that Goltieri is trying to find his way past Kurt Van Honak, and Jack Wyman's going to make it 3 wide here as the LMP2 driver's trying to come on through. They're side by side to the corner. There's Elwin Sykes who goes deep as well, and how all 3 of them made it through there without contact, well, that's beyond me. But I can tell you right now they're racing as fair as they can, and Kurt Van Honak here under huge pressure as he gets a face full of the Lamborghini in his rearview mirror as they make the way down to turn 1. It's going to go to the inside. There's a little bit door to door, and they're both turned sideways, but they both keep it together. My goodness, well, you couldn't ask for more of a sequential drift, and that means now it's going to be Davide Fabo who finds his way on through. Van Horenacker drops down and off the circuit. That's James Slates who goes a bit wide, and now onto a bit of rallycross out of turn 2. But my goodness, how they survive that, I do not know. Van Horenacker is flashing his lights. He will feel as though that he was impacted as a result of that. Well, I think both of them were, to be fair, but my goodness, they survived that. And meanwhile, Arjun Craig comes on past Elwin Sykes as they make the way down into turn number 5 here for another time of asking. But it is the case that as they roar on through here, this GT3 AM class, well, we said it was competitive. Well, it is fiercely competitive as they make the way down the back straight here, down Andretti, and head up towards the S's. Now as they come running through this time, I think things will calm down a little bit compared to how it has been. But I can tell you that whilst all this is happening, well, Galtieri right now is trying to find a way past teammate Davide Fabo, and I think Fabo's going to make things a little bit easier by comparison here. He's not going to want to battle too much for the simple reason at the end of the day, if the two teammates squabble over it, I think there might be a word to the team principal afterwards. But as they make their way through the corner now, Galtieri can try and run away with things as they make their way out to turn number 10, and you can see there Fabo making a little bit of an error, running a bit wide, and Van Hernacker behind him just not close enough to capitalise. And as they make the way round up towards turn number 2 once again, now the damage is being done, but meanwhile behind we can see Paul Williams here having to go defensive and scythe his way through GT3 class traffic. He's the leader of the LMP2 AM class, and as they make the way out of 2 up into 3, Vessels is there as well, but the gap to go up the inside, Arjun Craig, they both take it here, and Paul Williams, the Team Tech Rouge driver right now, has probably got a few swear words coming up for the simple reason this is the worst possible traffic you could catch at the worst possible time. They're literally all in line astern, and he's got P2 right on his backside trying to nip at the lead. And as they make the way out to the Moss corner right now, you can see Van Hernacker runs a little bit wide now as they make the way down the back straight here. Well, the good news of Williams is he's going to have enough space just to come on through. As they make the way on down, you can see it's going to be Vessels here who's going to have the overspeed. Now will he go around the outside? He's got a lot of run here. I think Vessels could attempt it, but he's got traffic. That's Davide Fabo, who he's got traffic of his sister teammate, and as they make their way into the corner, Vessels has to back off for the time being, and well, he had it all lined up so perfectly, and now it's the worst possible time, and of course it's his teammate who he will not want in his way. But to be fair, that's just coincidence and circumstance. I don't think there's anything they could have done about it, but Paul Williams lives to fight another day after what was looking to be a very hairy situation for our LMP2 class leader. Meanwhile, further back in the battle for P3 in the class, you can see Jonathan Collins here, the privateer. He has got Richard Stanton in hot pursuit. We're only just shy of 10 minutes into this. We're not even a sixth of the way there, but it's already erupting, and as they make the way around right now, Collins, well, he's got to try and hold off what is there, Richard Stanton. To be fair, Stanton finding a bit of difficulty in getting past Galtieri, so it's going to buy him a bit of time as they make the way down into Moss corner. But we look back to the battle for the lead, and well, you can see here it is the case that Stefan Vessels is really building up as much pace as possible, and there's even more traffic up ahead for Paul Williams. This is not good, and you can see he's flashing his lights here. It must be a case that he's thinking to himself, not again. And as they make the way down into the corner, in towards the S's here, well, Paul Williams has found his way through. Oh, goodness me! And that was DDD Verlaine there just shutting out, and it is the case. Well, thankfully for what is Vessels there's a little bit of a runoff patch or gravel that's not too abrasive, and Vessels is able to go racing again from P4, but that could have been curtains to the racing Team Astra Blue driver. He's lost 2 places to Stanton and Collins, but that could have been far, far worse, and I think there it was the case. I think Didi Verlaine looked to go onto the racing line into the S's, and then looked into his rearview mirror, and then just suddenly noticed, oh crikey, there's second place coming through. And that was very unfortunate for Vessels, but he's been able to keep it together. Now he's going to be closing up to the back of both Stanton and Collins, who are finding it very difficult to cut their way through the traffic. As you can see as well, that is Michael Price, who's closed up. He's P5 in the LMP2 AM class, and the Excite Racing driver here is coming on through as they make their way down. I know there's GT3 drivers in this race as well who are battling, but this battle for what is the top 5 of the LMP class right now is taking a very unique dynamic because of this multi-class racing, as we can see Stanton trying to find his way through it, as they're all squaddling. That's Prouting battling with Jeremy DeBova as well in the mix in the GT3 Pro class, but in the end they all find the way on through, and Price is looking for the overspeed here down the back straight into the S's versus Vessels, and as they make the way into the corner, he's not great this time, but Stanton's left the door open, but in the end he manages to close it shut just in time, and as they all squeeze on through the final 2 corners here, they all make it past the road. DeBova, who shows great awareness that he's got 4 LMP2s coming through, line astern, nose to tail, and as they make the way onto another lap here, well, I do wonder how long it's going to be, whether these guys will be starting to really push a position. Now the traffic's gone, and Vessels immediately going onto the offensive here. As you can see, he's right tucked in behind Richard Stanton, who has a little bit of a poor X there. Michael Price trying to get involved as well, and this is the battle for what is P2 in the LMP2 Pro class, with the LMP2 AM class, I should say, with the fact that we've got Collins, who's a little bit further up the road. He's only 7/10 up the road. He's in this battle as well, and I think he'll be hoping that the battle for the P3 part of this is going to stay as it is, and he can break away, but we'll have to wait and find out as they roll them through here. With 12 minutes complete, we have still got 48 or so minutes plus the final lap to go, and anything can happen as our drivers make their way on down the back straight. And thank you for clarifying there, Vessels. If it was gravel, it would be straight into the barrier, so it was runoff area, it was runoff asphalt and tarmac, and that's what enabled you to be able to keep it on what is a straight path and not into the barrier. So that's great to hear as they make the way through turn number 8 and up into 9 right now. And Will Vessels trying to find his way into this as we see moving offline. That's Tristan Di Nobrega, your GT3 AM leader. I think will be very happy to just let these guys come on through, given he has got a gap of 7.2 seconds. And the moment that will come down, of course, given the fact he's just lifted off, but he's got a comfortable gap to play with. But this battle in the LMP2 class is not going away. And well, every time Vessels looks at a move, Stanton says, no you don't, and he puts up a defense because they make the way on down right now. We ride on board the gearbox here of Jonathan Collins, and you can see Vessels just trying to nip to the inside, but Stanton says, I saw that one coming, I can outbrake you into the corner. And as they make the way down towards turn number 5, it is the case, of course, Collins is not getting any respite here. He makes one mistake and he's got to worry. As you can see, that Stanton goes defensive. There's a bit of contact between the two of them, and it does mean that Michael Price now comes on through to take P4, and Vessels there came in a bit hot, but to be fair, when they're racing that close, you can't blame them. But it means he's lost the place now and a little bit of front end contact. Well, I think it's now Michael Price's turn to see if he can make something happen. And as they come and charge on down through the right-hander here. And I should clarify to you, BC Gaming, if you're wondering why we've got drivers who are racing in this, who are also in the YouTube chat and whatnot, this is a post-race broadcast. This is not quite live. We're bringing it to you as if it were live for the simple reason we want you to have that raw experience. So don't worry if you're wondering about multitasking in LMP2 cars. It is the case. These guys were focused on one thing, and that was racing. But as we come back to the action now, we can see it is the case that Michael Price now trying to take a shot at what is Richard Stanton here. But Stanton has proven it very difficult to break through as they come roaring on down. And as they make their way through the long left-hander this time, I think it's going to settle into a little bit of a rhythm. And as they roll on through the right-hander, I can tell you in the meantime that in the battle for the GT3 Pro Class lead, we're allowed to get away from the LMP2s for a brief while. It is Jeremy DeBova here who is leading, but he's got Lucas Romano right behind him, and Romano is looking very aggressive as they make the way through the right-hander of turn number 3 here. And Romano coming on strong here after what was a very difficult start to his proceedings in the sprint race. He seems to have found the form by comparison in this feature race, and you love to see it right now. The two German machines, the BMW M4 in Romano's hands versus Jeremy DeBova in the Mercedes, going toe-to-toe as they roar on through Moss Corner. We ride on board here with Lucas Romano on the dashboard. You can see Jeremy DeBova there, literally just a little bit of oversteer on exit, just getting the power down a bit too aggressively. And well, we do look from this very brief, well, we were going to look at this very briefly, as I'm hearing there's been an off-track for Richard Stanton and also for Michael Price. Now, I'm not sure what's happened there, but I can tell you with all that Stefan Vessels now who's now up into P3 with all that is said and done. And as a result, Vessels, I think, will now be trying to break away, but we focus here still on the GT3 Pro leaders. They make their way through the final couple of corners and then go on to what for them is their 13th tour of the circuit under race conditions. But right now, I think Lucas Romano here trying to size up where Jeremy DeBova might be a little bit weaker and trying to find a way on in. And it's the same for Matthew Prouting here, who is tucked in behind the Mercedes of Diva Laming. And it is the case, Mercedes, BMW, as they roll them through the corners, which is absolutely great to see. And well, it is the case where Sean Scooter by comparison 14.2 seconds back in the Lamborghini and not having a happy day of racing as the South African, as we see him here in the Racing Team Astra Blue driver, I think, just trying to get the car home to get some solid points. The Lamborghini just very sensitive through these sweeping corners and the elevation changes, particularly at turn 2 with the rear just wants to step out, and it seems those Scooter just not having a comfortable day, and this is not one that I think he will be remembering any time soon. But we'll have to wait and see. Of course, it could all turn around. We've still got 3/4 of the race or so to go. Meanwhile, looking back to our LMP2 class drivers here, we do have Price, who has dropped quite well off the back of Richard Stanton when all is said and done, when our time screen is updated, as he makes his way on through the right hand here and runs a little bit wide. I do think that Price right now is falling backwards towards Baz Meacham. 107.4 last time around for Price, 108.3 for Meacham. In fact, he's gaining on Meacham and getting away from him. But meanwhile, Matthew Prouting is still tucked in behind Diva Laming as they make the way through the right-hander here of turn number 10, trying to find a way on through. But things have calmed down a little bit now around the field. We are now into that phase where the racing starts to settle down a little bit. I know I sound as though I'm going to say that and regret my words later, but we do normally see at this point, as we're hearing that Michael Price has had another off-track and Baz Meacham has moved up to P5 in the LMP2 class. We focus on the GT3 Pro battle for P3 here between Prouting and also Diva Laming, and we look at Laming as the focus of our camera. As we clear the first quarter, we now enter that phase where everyone's starting to think about strategy, starting to think about where the undercut could work, where the overcut may work. And typically we see our first pit stops, our scheduled stops, where there's only one mandatory stop in this race. We see them at around the 20-minute mark as Davide Fabo loses the rear of the car, and Matthew Prouting there, well, he decides to run off. I wonder if that was in reaction to seeing the Mercedes turn and thinking, you know what, I'm going to have to give it space. Well, he's gained the place in the end, albeit he's technically done it off track, although I think the stewards will waive that one, given both drivers made a bit of a colossal blunder of what was the Moss corner there. Albeit I say that it's the case they're pushing as hard as possible. Got to give them credit where it's due. And as they make the way down the back straight here and up towards turn number 8, they're not going to give it up, with Prouting defending to the inside here. And I think Davide Fabo is going to back it off and think, you know what, you just had a little bit of a moment, calm it down and come back at the BMW on the next lap, as they make the way through the final corner here and head around to go on to another lap very shortly. But that was a bit of a difficult situation for the pair of them, but Prouting's made a way, or sorry, found a way I should say, of making it work in the end. But we look from this battle for P3 in the GT3 Pro class to the battle for what is P3 in the GT3 AM class. And Navarro over here, well, I think he's had a bit of an off at some point because he's dropped some way down the order. He was running in the top 3. He's now battling to get back into the top 3 here. And well, we can see he's trying to find a way past Davide Fabo. And Fabo going defensive into 2. That's going to put him on an understeer line. And over there, very sensible goes to the cutback. And it's a classic cutback move up into P3. As you can see there, Jack Wyborn trying to come on through, but Wyborn getting boxed in there. I think he's going to have to be patient, given the fact that Bova has been more focused on the battle for P3 in the GT3 class, and rightly so, as meanwhile as they make the way down the run towards Moss Corner here, you can see Paul Williams, your LMP2 class leader, who is now coming on through, and well, oh goodness, been wide on there, losing the rear of the car, but he falls off circuit there, and I think that means that everyone's going to be okay. The yellow flags will be temporarily waving there, and everyone will know about the incidents. We see Navarro over there letting Paul Williams through down the inside. They make the way down the back straight of Andretti up towards the S's once again. Meanwhile, well, he had a great race 1 and he made his way from 9th in class all the way up to P2 in the end, and now he's trying to repeat that in race number 2 here in the feature. Mark Sykes, he's up to P6 in the GT3 AM class. He is battling with Elwin Sykes in front of him. Behind him, that's Chris Keaton, who is a lap down and following in his tracks. And as they make the way through the S's here, it is the case. They've rolled through the right into the left, and we can see Mark Sykes here just keeping his head down and trying to find his way on through. Now, we do know that it is the case the McLaren, by comparison with the Audi, a little bit more of a handling car, typically from what we've seen in the field, but it is the case that Audi, perhaps the best GT3 out of all those available. But the thing about the Audi is, very sensitive. You push it too hard, those tyres get a little bit hot, and the car will feel horrible. We see Mark Sykes here flashing his lights, trying to do a little bit of distraction, trying to get in the head of Elwin Sykes, but Elwin Sykes' experience, he knows what's coming as they make that into the brain zone, and by the looks of things, that is Jonathan Collins who's had an off, and that means that Stefan Vestas is back up to P2 in the LMP2 AM class as Collins rejoins P3, and you can see here as they make the way down through 4, where it is a bit of a mad scramble, and on top of that, I do believe that there is, oh my goodness, trying to figure that's Holman in P9, who's a lap down on the LMP2 drivers as they all roll through. But it's getting a bit of a muddle here, but Mark Sykes being able to back out of it, and the same for Elwin Sykes, who's actually been able to capitalise on this and use the LMP2 drivers as a bit of a spacing tool as they make their way down this back straight. But now, as we can see Price coming through, this will be where Elwin Sykes will once again be at the vulnerability of being attacked by Mark Sykes, who is now 1.67 seconds back and will be trying to close up as soon as possible. As they make their way on through the corners here, I can tell you one driver who is not having a happy day at the office, and he's got a bit of a damaged front end on that Mercedes. You can see the front right hand side of the bonnet raised up, or the hood, however you want to phrase it. It is the case that right now Van Hoornacker here in P8 in the GT3 AM class, he is trying to catch up to Arjun Craig, who is missing the front of that Ferrari. Now I wonder what's happened here, but Craig has had a bit of a moment. In fact, he's missing a huge chunk of the front of that car as they make the way down through into the turn 2 left-hander here, and well, as they make the way on through, the Team Racing Netherlands driver here in P7 in class, I think we're just trying to keep it on the straight and narrow for the time being, as we are hearing that Price is up to P7, and I think Sean Scutter's had a bit of a moment. That's at the what is the Moss hairpin. And well, Sean Scudder there with a bit of over rotation coming out the corner, I think, and he's P5 in the GT3 Pro class, and things are not going his way at all here at what is the Motorsport circuit. And as he makes his way up to the back straight, we do look back to that battle between what is Van Hoornacker and Gregor. And as they make their way down the back straight here, no change for now. I think both drivers with wounded cars just trying to sort out where exactly that damage is, what it enables the car to do, what it doesn't enable the car to do, where they can push and where they can't. And we can see that Craig really struggling on the straight by comparison. As into the pits, and our first scheduled stop of this race, as far as I'm aware, is Stefan Vessels here. And also we have got Jonathan Collins into the pits. He's making his way on in. So some early pit stops coming on and through, and that is going to open up things quite considerably in terms of the strategy. Vessels in particular, who may be going for an undercut. But meanwhile, Van Hoenacker here, we come back to that battle for peace in the GT3 AM class. Well, he's tucked in behind was Arjun Craig as they make the way through turn 2. We ride on board here with the Mercedes drive. You can see the extent of the damage on the front of the car, and we see Craig, they're getting a bit wrong. He pulls the inside. Van Hoenacker tries to go around the outside, but he's understeering off as a result and go very late on the brakes with a lot of speed. And I think Van Hoenacker there had to pick a side to choose, and in the end he went to the outside. It didn't quite work out, and well, I think the Machado DB2 driver there will be cursed with his stars. He couldn't make that move around the outside. It was worth a try, but he's now got a long way to go to catch back up. But meanwhile, whilst all that's happening, I can tell you we do have a new leader in the GT3 Pro class, and that is Lucas Romano here, who is currently leading by 2.7 seconds over Jeremy Debova as he makes his way down through turn number 2 and into 3. As he comes roaring on through and up into turn number 3, it is the case that right now I think the two of them are quite inseparable. And well, that last lap from Jeremy Debova, a 1:19.67, as we see Romano going wide there. I think that might tell you the story of what happened to Jeremy Debova. I think a bit of a run wide somewhere out on the circuit, and that's why the two have swapped places, as we do see it now. Where it is the case after that one little mistake, Jeremy Debova is right back there with Lucas Romano. He only takes one error and they've caught back up, and now they make their way down the back straight here. And AMG Power versus M Power as they make their way down the back straight. We'll have to wait and see how it plays out, as we've got pit stops happening in the GT3 AM class. Lorenzo Galtieri and Arjun Craig will into the pits, plus Davide Fabo as I look at my commentary box window. And also from the LMP2 class we have Bayes Meacham into the pits, as we are now nearing the halfway point of this race, and we will really start to see the undercut drivers take into the pits if they haven't already. But right now, focusing on the battling on the circuit, the battle for this lead could not be closer as they roll on through. We ride on board the gearbox here of Lucas Romano. Now, what can he do versus the Mercedes behind him? Well, he must know that the BMW is a little bit better through the corners by comparison. He can be a bit braver on the frontal on the corner exit, given the fact that it doesn't deploy as aggressively its power coming out of the corners, whereas on the straights, that's where Debova is going to be the stronger of the two. Given the fact as well, this circuit, very tricky to keep it consistent. Both drivers will not want to push too hard. Romano has the advantage, of course, in the fact that he has clear air in front of him. Debova, as he gets closer, will pick up the dirty air off the back of the BMW, and that dirty air will take off some of the front end downforce, and therefore some of the front end grip that is being applied to that Mercedes, and that could hurt it through the long sweepers. So as a result, what Debova's got to try and do is get really close coming out of this corner, out of Moss Corner. If he can get out the corner approximately 4 tenths and closer, he'll have a chance up into the S's. If he's not there, Romano's going to be safe. So the BMW is no slouch in terms of acceleration. And as they make their way down towards what is turn number 8 once again, we do look at them making their way down from the exterior cameras here, and you can see some of our LMP2 drivers making their way through as well. That's Holman coming up through the pair, and also we'll very shortly, I believe, also have one of the Stanton family members coming through. I think that might be Richard Stanton unless I'm mistaken, but you can see that's going to put some space between Romano and Debova as well, and that'll help Romano out briefly as they make their way on to another lap here. And as they come through, that is Richard Stanton. And well, speaking of Richard Stanton, as he makes his way through, currently P2 in the LMP2 class. Remembering, of course, that we did have that pit stop of what was Stefan Vessels' IMB forward. Oh, goodness! There's contact between Richard Stanton there and also Lucas Romano. And I think Richard Stanton trying to go around the outside of Romano. And in the end, Romano, I think, knew he was there, but he understeered and made contact. But Richard Stanton is not going to be too pleased with that. But I can tell you one driver who will be pleased with all of that and the contact, well, that will be Jeremy Debova. But he now has Richard Stanton between the two of them again. Well, you'll be thinking right now, come on, what does it take for me to have a chance? As they make their way through the right hand, and you can see there the hazard lights on from what is Lucas Romano to say sorry as they roll them through and down towards the back straight. And Stanton's going to come on through here, but how much has that cost him? As meanwhile, into the pit comes Paul Williams from what was the lead of the LMP2 class. Now, where is his main rival? We predicted Stefan Vessels, who right now is making his way through what is turn number 3 and down towards turn 5 here. We'll have to wait and see how it plays out. A pit stop for Vessels was 57.4 seconds. We'll see if Paul Williams takes as long. As Vessels, oh goodness me, Vessels runs wide there and just misses the wall by a hair's width. My goodness, Vessels could not have put a paperclip between himself and the wall there, I can tell you. And well, that shows you how hard he's pushing. That one little mistake may have just cost him very very badly indeed as they make the way down towards what is turn number 8. And as they come roaring on down right now, it is the case that we can see Baz Meacham by comparison in the battle for P5 in the LMP2 AM class here, looking to go on the offensive as they make the way down this back straight. And well, we can see as Meacham trying to go round the outside here, side by side they come. Now has Collins got enough of an overspeed to be able to defend on the inside here? Well, I think it's going to be the case. He will have enough speed as they roll through. Meacham's going to go deep into the corner. He goes down the outside there with the aero package, and that is a brave move. But that's why he's now up into P5 for BRM as they make the way through the final corner there. Nice move from Meacham to move up another position. But as they come through and down into turn number 1 this time, I can tell you that with that pit stop, Paul Williams has come back out in P2 here, well clear, 11.8 seconds clear of Stefan Vessels. And well, with that mistake made by Vessels, what I would say, if we do a little bit of prediction, Vessels lost approximately 10 seconds. I think it would have been nip and tuck between the two of them, and so Vessels would be now in P2, and effectively your leader come what is at the end of the pit stops. Although I say that, Jim Stanton is in the lead right now, and he has made a stop, but I do wonder whether he had to make an early stop due to damage. I'm not 100% sure, so we'll wait and see how that plays on out. But it could be that Jim Stanton has found a way to jump everybody, and right now have an 18-second gap, and one that is very comfortable indeed. We will find out in due course. As meanwhile Collins here, well, he's now trying to come back at Meacham in the battle for P5 in the LMP2 class, and as they make the way up the back straight here, well, we can see it's going to be the case that Meacham's going to go to the outside. He knows that the grip's on the outside of the racing line, and as they make their way through, Collins backs off here. No way through this time, as we hear that Lucas Romano and Matthew Prouting are both leaving the pits. And well, where are they? Well, we can see here is Lucas Romano, who we've had some clarification from with regards to the contact between him and Stanton with regards to in turn 2. The fact that it wasn't quite understood there, I think there was a little bit of a misunderstanding with regards to the dimension, well, in his opinion, the dimensions of Stanton's car and how wide Stanton thought his car was. And of course, that will probably go to the stewards if it has been submitted to the stewards. But that's fair enough. And as Romano gets himself back up to speed here in P3, he has made that pit stop, and Didi Devalaming and also Jeremy DeBova have yet to make their stops. We'll wait and see how that plays out in terms of the strategy. But we do say hello to Lucas Romano in the YouTube chat there as I try to make the way through. And to be fair, we do have Richard Stanton as well, who has apologised to Lucas Romano. So fair play. It is the case, a little bit of an error from Richard Stanton. But it's great to see, of course, in the chat there. And also I can tell you down the paddock, very friendly between all of our drivers. And that's what makes this league absolutely fantastic. Fair, hard racing out on the circuit, but drivers do put their hands up when things go wrong and look to improve upon them, and that's what it's all about at the end of the day. Whether it's sim racing or real world racing, it's all about having fun, enjoying the racing, and at the same time being both gentlemen and ladies off the circuit as well as on the circuit. But meanwhile, we can see here Jonathan Collins trying to find a way to hunt down where's Baz Meacham, but he's lost out quite significantly, Collins, quite recently, and as they make the way through the corners right now, it is the case. And we can see Collins, well, I think at this point in time, he's lost quite a bit of time to Baz Meacham, and well, he will be just thinking about trying to put in some consistent laps. But it has calmed down a little bit as we near the halfway point of this race, although I say that, oh goodness me, and Lucas Romano into the wall there again. Seems every time we cut to a camera shot that's close to him, something's gone wrong. But Romano, well, is he going to be able to get the car back up to speed? It does look as though he's going to. No, it is a case. It is a jump to the pit, and well, that will release Jeremy DeBova into what is the lead of the GT3 Pro class right now. And well, with that jump to the pits, and I presume it's for heavy damage in Romano's case, which is very unfortunate for the RP Motorsports PRO-AM driver. We can see here it is the case that Jeremy DeBova now in a comfortable advantage of 3.6 seconds. I say comfortable, well, that could go at any point, to be fair. We'll have to wait to see. It's Paul Williams into the pits again here. Now I'm wondering whether it's the case that he didn't fuel. It's a very quick stop. Could it be a penalty potential? It's just underfueled. It's a very short stop. His pit time was only 1.78 seconds. So it is the case he's going to come out in P4 here. And what was looking to be quite a comfortable lead has now fallen to Jim Stanton, who right now, the privateer, will be very, very happy as they make their way through. And we've got a car turn there. That is Collins, who is sideways across the road at turns 9 into 10. So he's going to be getting himself back up to speed. And well, I think that's just a mistake. He's lost the rear potentially, but he's getting back up to speed now. So that's all well and good. And as he makes his way down there, well, I can tell you with regards to the battle for what is the LMP2 AM class lead, is the case that Stanton, the best part of 31 seconds ahead of Stefan Vessels at this point in time. As we see there, in what was parked up at turn number 3 on the outside, that's Mark Sykes. So Mark Sykes has jumped to the pits. I presume he's hit the wall coming out of turn number 3. He's gone straight off into the wall, I should really say. But Stanton right now finding a bit of trapping. That's DDD Valami who loses the rear end. Oh, goodness me, and it's the case that as all of our drivers coming through there, and Holman just about squeezing past DDD Valami. It's all going horribly wrong for so many drivers in such a short period of time. And well, I can tell you one thing, ladies and gentlemen, I'm already getting flashbacks to the Apex Racing Academy lobby from earlier this week, where we saw a similar situation as time went on. Tyre life started to wear down, and also our tired arms and legs started to kick in. Drivers were falling off left, right and centre, and it was all about who could keep it together. And well, right now, who will come out on top? That's the big question, as we see Holman are taking a huge amount of apex curve at turn 9, and the car getting hooked onto that curb. It's so high, that apex curve, and it is not working out for Holman whatsoever. As meanwhile, Kurt Van Hoenacker, well, he's in P7 and now hunting down what is Elwin Sykes in front of him. P7 in the GT3 AM class, I should clarify. But as we take a brief sip of water here, I think it's okay. Oh my goodness me, we will get to take a sip of water, and then just under braking, looks like Van Hoenacker, the rear of the car just not settled, and the car just sandwiching its way into the wall. And I think for them a change by DB2 driver, that is a jump to the pits. It is indeed, and that is a disaster for what was the McChange driver Van Hoenacker, because right now, well, the driver in the sister team of what has been changed by DB1 of DDD Valami almost runs wide there coming out of turn number 3. It is getting very, very difficult for all of our drivers here at Motorsport, and we have still got just shy of half the race to go. My goodness, well, I can imagine it's going to be one of those ones where anything can happen, and on top of that, at any moment, our race leaders could fall to the bottom, and our drivers at the bottom could find their way up the order very rapidly. And speaking of a driver who might want to achieve that, that could be Mark Sykes for comparison, who, as he was saying to me in the build-up to tonight, put a lot of practice in, focused on getting his consistency down. Well, right now he's in the pits with repair work being done to the car in P9 in the GT3 AM class, but P2 in what was in the sprint. I think that's kept him very happy as all of our drivers make the way on around. We have Navarro DeBova and Kurt Van Hoenacker both in the pits. So a change by DB2 in the pits of the GT3 AM class. The whole team's in the pits having work done on the cars. Chris Keaton has retired. We've only had one retirement from this race, and that is Chris Keaton. But right now, everybody in a very critical situation and trying to keep it calm. And there we just quickly snuck in a glass of water before it's the case we return to the proceedings right now. But with the gaps quite open between all of our drivers at this time, now it becomes that question, of course, of keeping your head down and on top of that focusing on consistency. So what do we mean by that, and what really goes through the head of our drivers? Well, let's take, for example, here, Jim Stanton. So as the LMP2 leader right now makes his way down the back straight and navigates his way past Elwin Sykes there, a little bit of GT3 traffic, he will know that he has got a sizable gap to the drivers behind him, such as Stefan Vessels. But the thing for him is, of course, he can't lose sight of the fact he's still got to bring the car home. So he's got to find a way not to lose concentration, keep putting those lap times in. And, well, some of the ways to do it is, of course, try not to think about the guy behind, think about just putting the laps in, like it's a time trial session in a way, and that's one thing that they can do. As Stanton makes his way down here, I can tell you that it is the case that Richard Stanton, by comparison, now does have a little pack of LMP2s behind him, because we can see the P3 driver in the class has Paul Williams and Baz Meacham all closing up very rapidly indeed as they make the way down the back track. I can also tell you that Jack Wyborn has moved up to P6 in class, with Jonathan Collins just having an off, but focusing here and now on the battle for P3. We ride on board the gearbox here of Richard Stanton, and you can see Paul Williams trying to take a huge amount of run through turn number 9, and as they come through turn number 10, Williams knows that he has got the pace here to be on that podium. Will he be able to get himself onto that podium? Well, he's got to find his way past Richard Stanton first as they make the way through the opening corner and up towards 2, and Stanton having a bit of difficulty there in carrying the speed through. As they come into 2, you can see Williams literally left, right, trying to see where a gap is, trying to get in the head of Richard Stanton as they come into each and every braking zone, and as they roll him through the right hand up well behind, you can see Baz Meacham now trying to have an opportunity here. He's looking for his Meacham as they make their way down. Paul Williams has to go defensive in the run through 4 to 5, and Meacham backs off here. He knows that really the battle's for P3, it's not for P4, so he's just going to keep reminding Paul Williams, I think, look, if you don't get a move on, I'm going to take that place off of you and then come through very rapidly. As they make the way on down, we're hearing that Collins is into the pits after picking up that damage. Sean Scudder has jumped to the pits again, so it's not going well for the GT3 Pro driver. But right now we're focusing here and now on the battle for that P3 position in the LMP2 AM class. And as they roll through into the S's this time, well, Williams, I think, now having to look more behind him than he is in front of him. I do think that Baz Meacham is starting to put that pressure on. He's starting to just gradually ease it on, although we see there a little bit of a tank slapper coming out the final corner. And Meacham there just
pushing a little bit too hard. But meanwhile, Paul Williams, the closest he's ever been to the back of Stanton. This time he gets a really nice run out of turn 1 compared to Richard Stanton does Paul Williams. But it's after that where things start to equalise. But now that Meacham has made that small mistake, could Paul Williams, the Team Tetra Rouge driver, have an opportunity here to really build up to a move as they make the way out to turn number 3 and now head their way down towards turn number 5? As they come right on down, it is the situation right now where I think Paul Williams, if he can't get this move done at the end of this lap, he's going to have Meacham coming on the offensive again. And as they all come through, all 3 drivers having a different line there through Moss hairpin, it's the case. Paul Williams a bit of a symmetrical line, whereas Stanton going in quite deep into the opening apex to get a nice tight run through the final apex, and then Meacham the reverse. It's interesting to see how they all take that corner differently, and Meacham actually falls away because of his approach. Meanwhile, it is the case that the front 2 stay together, and Paul Williams really so close right now, and I think it is the case. It's going to be about when, not if he can go for a move as they come through at the final corner here. And now will he go for it into turn number 1? Surely he will. As we see there, Richard Stanton goes to fence in the middle of the road. Paul Williams has to back off once again, but they roll down into 1. But this time with that little bit of defense, Williams not close enough and instead has to now wait for an opportunity. And I think Stanton has identified a way to curb Williams' momentum. He needs to defend out the final corner and put it in the middle of the road into 1. And that seems to upset Paul Williams' rhythm as he goes wide out of 3. And I think there, just in case of carrying a bit too much speed in, and that releases Baz Meacham now to go on the offensive versus Richard Stanton. So it is the case that as they make the way on down, and we're hearing that Lucas Romano has come out of the pits, and as he says to us there in the YouTube chat, that is the case that he's put on a fresh set of tyres to go for the fastest lap since he had nothing to lose. So it is the case that Lucas Romano taking every point he can get, as Mark Sykes is also leaving the pits in what is P9 in the GT3 AM class. But right now, as Baz Meacham here looks to go on the offensive, can he find a way past the defensive Stanton? Well, as they make their way down to the SSE, you can see Meacham trying to make Richard Stanton go onto that very tight inside line, because Meacham, we know, loves the grip on the outside into the S's here, and he's getting very close. We ride on board here with the P4 driver in the LMP2 AM class. It's the closest battle on the circuit. We're staying with it for the time being, and as they make the way to another lap, how will it play out as they go through this lap? Well, you can see there, Stanton just struggling a little bit for exit speed out of 1. He just takes a bit too much apex curve by comparison with Meacham, and as they roll through 2, this is where now it gets a bit difficult for Meacham because he's got the dirty air. It affects the front end downforce, it affects the turning, and as they roll on through 3, is the case. Meacham just has a little bit of understeer initially, but he gets the power down, and Stanton there gets a good run initially, but bogs down on exit, and as they make their way into Moss at 5, it is the case now. Meacham goes in very deep on the brakes there, and just manages to avoid the contact as they make the way out of the corner. And well, I mean, it's the case of Meacham trying to take a lot under braking there into the Moss hairpin, trying to get in the head of Stanton, but it's not working right now. But now he's in the tow as they make the way down the back straight. It's a long run down the Andretti straight, and they've got a bit of traffic there. Oh, goodness me! And Stanton there literally been made to go to the outside. This could be the move for Meacham, but no, it's not in the end. He's on the inside on the corner where you want to be on the outside, and Meacham has to back off. But now they have got more traffic. That is Mark Sykes in front of us. They come through the corner, and well, you can see Stanton having to literally ease his way through with Mark Sykes there and the wounded Audi, and both drivers there having their momentum curbed to the utmost as they make their way round through turn number 1 once again. As they head up towards turn number 2 here, well, they've still got more traffic to go. That's Elwyn Sykes in the McLaren, and well, Baz Meacham here is probably thinking right now, I'm so close, and now it's all gone horribly wrong. I've got to do it all again, but that could have gone any way otherwise as they make the way through the right-hander there. But as they come roaring on through, I can tell you that right now, whilst all this is going on, we haven't really talked about it for some time, but the leader of our GT3 class as a whole, not talking about pros or AMs, but the class as a whole, is an AM driver here, and that is Tristan Dino Brega, the Racing Team Astra Blue driver, who is enjoying this race right now. He started right at the front with the reverse grid, and the Racing Team Astra Blue driver, well, he is 1 minute and 1 second ahead of second place man in the GT3 AM class, and that is Arjun Craig. And well, he will be repeating history in the fact that he will, if this continues, be an AM driver who manages to finish ahead of all the pros and take an overall GT3 class win, much like what Stefan Vessels did on a couple of occasions in what was the Season 2 of the GT3 Championship on iRacing. So it is the case that Racing Team Astra continuing their tradition of having some very fast driving drivers with some absolutely monstrous pace as they make the way on around. But we look from our GT3 AM leader to our GT3 Pro leader, and that is Jeremy DeBova, and he won't be too worried about the fact an AM driver is ahead of him in the classification. I think all he will care about is bringing home back-to-back wins, which will be critical for his championship campaign here. This is a big chance for Jeremy DeBova to get right up there at the top of the standings
and make an early break, particularly with Daytona on the horizon in a week's time, and of course that being the first of our super endurance races where double points is up for grabs. But as they roll them through, it is the case that right now Jeremy Dover looking very, very comfortable indeed. We've got quite a few gaps now in terms of our fields. We do have Matthew Prouting only 3.4 seconds behind Jeremy Dover. He's P2, Matthew Prouting, for Eclipse Racing in the GT3 Pro class. I think the two of them have found equal measure. But meanwhile, speaking of finding measure of one another, we can see Baz Meacham here, the BRM driver, who right now is trying to close back up to Stanton after that colossal amount of traffic, which seemed to affect Meacham a bit more than Stanton. Now he's back on the offensive once again and trying to close on up. But we have got a number of drivers into the pits, especially in the GT3 AM class, including Galtieri, Van Hernacker and Navarro de Bova. And I do think that both for the Challenge DB2 drivers of what is Van Hernacker and de Bova, both of them are having a very difficult day, and I think they've got a lot of repair work. But meanwhile, Paul Williams there into the wall, coming out the final corner. He's P5, the Team Tetra Rouge driver in what is the LMP2 class, and he has Price trying to come on through behind him, but Price is a lap down in P7. So as they make the way on through, it is the case that right now, well, I think Michael Price, who's had one of perhaps the most difficult races of the day, is now finding a little bit of joy in this race, which is he can unlap himself as he makes his way up through the right-hander. But as he comes roaring on through here, we'll have to wait and see whether he's able to find a way through Price or whether he has to sit there in formation for the time being. And it's a very frustrating place to be here for the Excite Racing driver. If he feels he's faster than Paul Williams, he needs to get through and then open up a gap of a couple of seconds within a couple of laps, because otherwise he will receive blue flags, and if he keeps it up, he may be subject to a penalty post-race because of the fact he wouldn't have been quote-unquote obeying the blue flags. But we'll wait and see as he makes his way down this back straight here, and as they come on through, I do think he's going to look for this opportunity to unlap himself. But Paul Williams there, where it's going to be a case of Price is going to do it, he's going to force it through and say to Paul Williams, you know what, I'm taking this whether you like it or not. And now Price has got to prove he can break away. As you can see, that's Lucas Romano flashing his lights in a little bit of fever there. But remember that Romano versus Matthew Prouting in front of him is a lap down on Prouting. It is the case they are not racing one another. Lucas Romano is a lap down, and well, he's won a fresh set of tyres to go for the fastest lap in class, and that is in the GT3 Pro class, and I think he's going to do that quite comfortably, given that his best lap is a 15.14, and meanwhile, versus his peers by comparison, the next fastest lap is what is, as I check my data screens right now, is a 14.96. So as the fuel comes down and he's chasing after Matthew Prouting right now, this will be the opportunity for him to try and go for that fastest lap later on in the race. As they roll through here, I can tell you that Paul Williams has really come up behind. Well, no, he has not come behind Meacham. My apologies. In fact, he is falling back from what is Michael Price there. But speaking of Baz Meacham, as we read our timing screen properly, Baz Meacham now back in the attacking position versus Richard Stanton with 15 minutes to go. We head into the final quarter, and as they make the way across that timeline, well, Meacham immediately looking around the outside here. He's been very smart, Meacham. He's trying to get in the head of Stanton and make Stanton have to go defensive at every corner, so that way Meacham can get cut back through these apexes and carry the great momentum, but Stanton's wise to it, and you can see there Stanton goes defensive in the run up to 3. Now can Meacham make this cutback work out of 3 in the long run down towards 4? Well, if he can, it's going to be the case as they head up towards 5 through 4. It's now Meacham's got to be the bold on the brakes, but we know he seems to struggle under braking into Moss Corner, and as they make the way through, this time he gets it hooked up quite nicely by comparison. He doesn't go overly deep into the corner, and instead it's right there. Now as they roll on through, Stanton's still the better of the two out the corner, and you can see that gap opening up by 3/10. And as they make their way down the back straight again, I think Meacham really needs to think about, okay, well, I'm losing it all in Moss Corner. That's the only place where Stanton is given that saving grace. Stanton always has to go defensive the rest of the lap, but it is at Moss Corner where he struggles. And Meacham, well, if he can't get locked under braking as much as he wants, then he's got to try and capitalise on a situation like this, where there's a nasty bit of traffic. And that's Davide Fabo, who it is the case that Stanton and Meacham both find their way on through. And now Meacham's going to be very close here as they make the way down and around. And as they head up towards turn 2, this is going to be the closest he's ever going to get. And I think Meacham is just backing off a little bit as we can see Stanton goes deep, but Meacham just not quite able to get the nose in on the inside to outside line. He's made to hold firm once again, but this time he's there, and we can see it is the case. He just comes out of the corner, just not quite able to get the pace down, but he is really trying to, as we hear that into the pits comes Jim Stanton from the lead of the LMP2 class. It is the case he did have another pit stop to go, and well, where is Stefan Vessels, I hear you ask? Well, here is P2 in the LMP2 class. Stanton is in the pits, that's Jim Stanton in the pits, and Vessels is going to come on through to retake the lead of the class with only 13 minutes to go. And now, as Jim Stanton's still being serviced, what about that battle? Well, Stanton's coming out the pit lane, and here is the fellow member of the Stanton family, Richard Stanton, who's holding on to P3 with Baz Meacham behind him. So I think it's now up to Jim Stanton if he can close down Vessels, but otherwise it'll be a P2 for him. And as they make their way through turn number 10 here, and definitely a good observation there from Stefan Vessels with regards to the fact dirty air can be so horrific at this circuit in particular, given the number of flying corners. And that's something that Meacham is having a battle against. He's got to have that pace, but also mitigate the dirty air that's robbing him of that front end downforce, and that will be hurting him massively through these sweepers, I can tell you, as they make their way on through and up into turn number 3, and as they roll them through this time. Again, this is the closest battle on circuit by far. We'll keep you updated with what's happening elsewhere. I mean, Tristan Dino Brega in the GT3 AM class still leading by just shy of a minute from Arjun Craig, and Jeremy DeBover in the GT3 Pro class leading by approximately 4.5 seconds versus Matthew Proughton, but nobody coming close together at the moment. And really, this is the closest battle on circuit as the timer winds on down, as they come down this back straight. Still 12 minutes to go, and well, I wonder how long it'll be before one of these two makes some mistakes. They are both pushing here, and you can see Richard Stanton going defensive so early. He knows that Meacham, but this is where Meacham thrives, trying to go around the outside, but he's not able to get it round this time. I know he's sized it up. The BRM driver here is thinking about it every time he's on that outside lane. He's probably thinking, do I dare go all the way round this time? And each time it's a no. He's just not quite there to do it, but he will give it a shot at some point, I suspect, as we're hearing that it's the case that Goltieri in the GT3 AM class has dropped to P7 by coming into the pits. That's promoted Mark Sykes up into P6 in the GT3 AM class, and it is the case that Goltieri having a difficult day in both races, but Meacham here very close to the back of what is there Richard Stanton. So they roll on through this battle, continuing as they make their way up towards turn number 5 once again. They've got a little bit of traffic ahead of them in the form of Mark Sykes here, and well, will they catch up to Mark Sykes under braking? They do indeed, and well, this could be horrible for Richard Stanton, because now he's got to wait his turn to get the power down and go past Mark Sykes. But in the end, I think he will comfortably make his way on through. You can see there, leaving it a bit later, Meacham there trying to get the toe off the Audi driver Mark Sykes, and that has not quite worked out this time for Meacham as they head up towards the long right into the S's. But as they come on through, meanwhile, we do look away briefly. We look a little bit further down our order in terms of overall drivers and driver time, and I can tell you that right now it is the case that we do have James Slates here, who's having a bit of a difficult day at the office and not looking in the happiest condition is that Audi R8, and he makes his way around for RP Motorsports PRO-AM as he comes roaring on down the back straight here. I think just trying to get some points on the board, and indeed he does have a gap of what is 41 seconds to P4 man in class, and that is Elwin Sykes, and he's 5.8 seconds down Arjun Craig. So I think he'll take this P3 with comfort if he brings it home as he makes his way through into the S's here. And it is the case now about keeping your head down and just bringing it to the end. There's not long to go, 10 minutes to go, and now this is where the stupid mistakes, as we like to refer to them, or the silly mistakes to be more polite about it, that's where the mistakes can kick on in. And well, we can see now it is going to be a game of not making mistakes. We see Lucas Romano there takes the fastest lap in the GT3 class of a 1:14.478. He's been able to find it towards the end of the race, and that will be the fastest lap considerably as they make the way in towards turn number 8 here, the LMP drivers. But it is the case of Lucas Romano. We put that fresh set of tyres on for the sole purpose of getting the fastest lap to recover some points out of it, plus a P4 in class, and that is going to go his way now, that fastest lap, those 2 extra points here in the feature race. But we look back now to this battle for P3, and as they make their way on through P3 in the LMP2 AM class, I should say, and right now, well, Stanton has found every which way to frustrate anybody who's come up behind him, whether it be Paul Williams or Baz Meacham. He has found a way, and I can tell you that right now, Paul Williams not closing this battle at the moment. In fact, he's matching both drivers for lap time, but he's not quite there. But we can see as they make them out of 3 this time, Meacham much closer. And in fact, is he going to take a look up the inside? No, he has to lift off there through 4 on the outside line. He's just not able to find a way to get alongside. He's almost there every time, but it's just not enough. And that is so frustrating when you're pursuing drugs. He's been like this now for the best part of 12 minutes. And when that time continues to wear on, and you've got to find this dirty air. It's all about just trying to keep it together, and as they make the way down in towards turn number 8 this time, well, I think he's got to find a way of simply overcoming the situation, or if not, I wonder how long it'll be before he has to back off and accept P4. Well, he won't want to back off and accept P4. Nobody ever wants to back off and accept their position until the very end, especially when you're this close. As they come down into turn 1 this time, they go on to what for them will be their 45th tour of the circuit, and meanwhile all the way up front in the LMP2 AM class, where it's been very up and down all evening for Racing Team Astra Blues, Stefan Wessels. Here's the case though, finishing P2, just finishing behind Michael Bryce in the sprint, and now in the lead of the class in the feature race here, with what has been a very roller coaster ride of a race. It is the case that right now the South African driver will be, I think, grateful that this one has calmed down quite a bit and he can focus on bringing the car home, because the last thing you want to do at the end of the day is have to expend so much energy in mass panic effectively in terms of trying to hold on to that position, recover your way up the order, then make a mistake to drop down the order and have to do it all again. But right now Wessels getting everything comfortably to the conclusion. 7 minutes to go plus the final lap for him when he comes up towards turn at number 4 this time around. I think he'll feel as though he's got full control of his destiny at this point. But meanwhile, speaking of control of destiny, well, the only guy who can find a way through is going to be Baz Meacham finding a way on through past Richard Stanton here to get onto that podium. But they are as they were as they make the way out of turn number 10. As they come on down and around here, and I think it is the case that Stanton has now found the measure of Meacham's time. I think Meacham may have hit a little bit of a cliff for the time being. We do look to what is Lucas Romano here, the fastest lap holder in the GT3 Pro class and GT3s overall. And well, he cannot recover this race now technically in terms of catching up to DDD Vlaming, because he is 5 laps down on DDD Vlaming, but he is going to soldier on to the checkered flag, as we see just in front of him there. That is Tristan Dino Brega, and we can see it's the case the GT3 AM leader for Racing Team Astra Blue, very comfortably rolling on here and bringing the car to its closure. Of course, with that disastrous sprint race, now it's all going his way once again, really finding that form and that recovery. And as he makes his way up towards turn number 8 right now, looking at a very comfortable 2 at the end. As meanwhile, Arjun Craig, to be fair, well, he made a little bit of a mess of it towards the end in the sprint when he lost P2 to Mark Sykes with that mistake. He's currently P2 in the GT3 AM class, and if things carry on as they are, with 6 minutes to go, he'll pick up a P2 here, and that's back-to-back podiums for the Dutchman, and I think he can be very proud of that, given the rate of attrition we've seen today across all classes and all drivers as he makes his way down into turn number 2. But meanwhile, do see here, Baz Meacham has lost out massively. In fact, he's been caught behind Jeremy DeBova there, and well, Richard Stanton has just set his personal best to the race at 107.8, and that shows you how much it is Richard Stanton pushing to break away from Baz Meacham. He's been bought some time with Meacham being caught up behind Jeremy DeBova over the course of the end of that last lap as they make the way through. As they come on down here in towards turn number 5, well, I think for Baz Meacham at this point, he's got it all to do once again. Again, he can close up, and you can see it here. In fact, that is not good news for Richard Stanton, who's had a very slow run out of the Moss hairpin here. But again, at the same time, he's just not close enough as Meacham to capitalise, and that is the difficulty. He's there, but he's not close enough, and that's been the story of this whole battle. He's just not able to close that 1 or 2 attempts to go for that move, and whenever the circumstances have arisen, it is the case that he's just not able to capitalise on those circumstances. And again, now Meacham being held in place by Tristan Dino Brega here. No for Dino Bregas, I should say. That's just the way the traffic flows. And Baz Meacham here, I think, in one of those situations right now where he's keeping a cool head, but I think he's really wishing that P3 could come to him. As they make the way around right now with less than 5 minutes to go, and the timer continues to tick down, we should say. It is the case. Meacham is gradually being closed up by P5 man Paul Williams here, who's got the gap down from 13 seconds when we last looked at it 7 laps ago. He's got it down to 10.5, and it is the case that Williams is lapping slightly faster, albeit Meacham has had some traffic to deal with. In fact, they both have, but I think the Team Tetra Rouge driver here, unless there is a mistake from the drivers ahead of him, a critical mistake, I think P5 may be the best he can achieve here today as they make the way on around. We'll have to wait and see. Stefan Wessels sets the fastest lap of the LMP2 AM class of 106.854. My goodness, saving it all to the final couple of laps. And to be fair, well, I can definitely tell you that this man here, Stefan Wessels, does not settle for second best. If he knows he can do it, he will go for it. But I think the Racing Team Astra team in general are of that mentality. They want the very best from themselves, and it shows here. Of course, the team spread across multiple series on multiple platforms where it's iRacing, a set of course of competition, alternatively GT Gran Turismo Sport and now Gran Turismo 7. They give it their all, and Stefan Vessel's definitely showing that as he makes his way on past what is their Davide Fabo as they head down towards what is the S's. In that Sean Scudder is leaving the pit lane, and well, as he leaves the pit lane, we look back to the battle for P3 in the LMP AM class here still, and that's Meacham versus what is Stanton. Not long to go, and Meacham, oh goodness me, Meacham just going a little bit wide there, and he loses the car, and that's a precarious place to be parked because he's right on the exit curb, and if anybody comes through their full speed, that is going to be a nightmare. Now where is Paul Williams and all this? Paul Williams is going to come on through to take P4. Well, I said only moments ago, if Williams was going to gain a place, it would be for a mistake, and right on call, Baz Meacham has made an error, and Paul Williams is up a place to P4 right at the end. And meanwhile, Jeremy DeBova here, well, I hear he's had an off, and it means now with only 3 minutes to go, we thought this race was relatively quietening down. In fact, it's now loudening itself up quite a bit, if that's the way you can say it, because Matthew Prouting is now right behind the leader in the GT3 Pro class, and the battle is back on again. The gap was 4 seconds, it's now come down, and we have only got moments to go. These guys have got 3 laps to go when they come on to the next one, I do believe, but we'll have to wait and see as they make their way on down in towards turn number 8. As they come roaring on down, it's going to be one of those situations whereby I think already DeBova's going to think about going defensive as they make the way into the right hander, trying to go around. There's no way through for Prouting right now. He has to wait, and DeBova covers him off on the cutback very nicely, but this is not the way you want it to go right in. We ride on board the gearbox, looking back here of what is Jeremy DeBova as they make the way out of the final corner, and as they head across that timeline for them, I do believe it's now 2 more laps remaining. As we see, that is, I believe, unless I'm mistaken, that's Stefan Vessel's going through, our overall race leader. He'll determine how many laps everybody does, because he'll be the first driver to see the checkered flag. And with that interlude, Matthew Prouting has fallen back a bit. Now, can DeBova use this and capitalise and keep the gap above a second? If he cannot, he could be in trouble as they make their way through. And meanwhile, speaking of trouble, well, James Slates right now is closing up to the back of Arjun Craig, who's had a major off, and that has caused the two of them to close up dramatically as they make the way down here in towards turn number, that's going up towards turn number 8 as they head down towards the S's, and as they flow on through here, well, I think it's going to be one of those situations whereby they're closing, and well, that is a glitch on our timing screens there, ladies and gentlemen. Very sorry about the fact it was saying that Jeremy DeBova and also Prouting were coming together. That's not the case, but instead what is the case, I can tell you, is that Arjun Craig is still under pressure from James Slate, but right now James Slate's not able to find a move here with less than a minute to go, and our race leader will be going on to the final lap very shortly. As I can see on my circuit map, the Vessels is coming through what is there, coming through the final couple of corners, and then he'll go on to that final lap in short order. But as they make the way on around, in fact, he's just gone on to the final lap, my apologies. He's gone round as our circuit map is updated. Craig trying to hold off Slates, and I think he might have enough in the tank. It's going to be close, but we will wait and see with bated breath as they come on through. As they come running on down in towards the Moss corner here, I can tell you that Jeremy DeBova has opened up a gap of 1.4 seconds to Matthew Prouting, so I think Jeremy DeBova is feeling comfortable, but how will it all play out in the very end as they make the way down the back straight? Well, Slates has got a much better exit coming out of Moss corner versus what is Craig there as they come down the Andretti straight. It's the case we can see Craig going defensive. He's tucked into the slipstream as well. Lucas Romano is going to help him out a little bit here, whether it by intention or not, as we see some sparks flying off the back of the BMW, and as they make their way into the corner, well, I think Craig will be safe for now as they make their way through, but we have to look from them to our overall leader because he's coming to the end of his race, and well, it has been a case. He has been down the order, he's been back up it, and in the end he stayed up there because he comes through the final corner. Here's your winner in the feature in the LMP2 AM class. It is Stefan Vessels from South Africa for Racing Team Astra Blue who takes the win in the LMP2s, and he has finished in the end 26.6 seconds ahead of what will be second place man Jim Stanton. Meanwhile, taking the win in the GT3 Pro class, holding off the challenge from Matthew Prouting, will be Jeremy DeBova when it was said and done. A fantastic drive from Jeremy DeBova to make it 2 wins out of 2 today, and Matthew Prouting, to be fair, should be proud of himself for that second place. A great drive from him. And then meanwhile, I can tell you that in what is the LMP2 AM class, it will be Richard Stanton who has held off the charge from Paul Williams and Baz Meacham to bring home the 3rd step on the podium. P3 to Richard Stanton, a great defensive drive in the end from him, and will Davide Fabo come home in P3 in the GT3 Pro class. But meanwhile, making his way around right now, and I think he's going to be the only driver, unless I'm very much mistaken. In fact, he is a lap ahead of his competition in class, and as he makes his way for the final couple of corners, we had a disaster of a sprint. He lost all of it in the end, but as he makes his way around right now, he's recovered it and he's going to take the win in the feature. Tristan Dino Brega from South Africa for Racing Team Astra Blue is your winner in the GT3 AM class by a colossal margin in the end. He kept his head down, stayed out of trouble. It will be Arjun Craig who comes home P2, holding off James Slates in the end, the Team Racing Evans driver, holding off the RP Motorsports PRO-AM driver when all is said and done. And well, my goodness, what a fantastic feature race in the end. Crazy racing up and down the order, but fair racing at the same time, and that's what we love to see. And well, in the end, those drivers who held on made it work. And as they all make their way around right now in towards what will be the pit lane when they're in that, as he makes his way in, Vessels, I think, will be very pleased with this one after the difficulties of what was the sprint race, where he finished P2 in the end and lost out to Michael Price. And meanwhile, Tristan Dino Brega, now he'll be thinking to himself, the Racing Team Astra Blue driver, that if he can next time at Daytona absolutely nail it, his championship campaign and the momentum will swing massively with him. He just needs that one solid round to take him right back up there, because he's got the pace, he's got the performance, but he just needs the fortune on his side, and it wasn't there in the sprint, but he's recovered it today in the feature. And well, Jeremy DeBova as well was already peeled into the pits. I can definitely tell you he will be best pleased with this. A colossal result, and that will turn the GT3 Pro Championship upside down with him moving far up the order. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, let's take you through those race results one more time before we get ready for our post-round interviews with our drivers. So in the end, taking the win overall in the LMP2 class was Stefan Vessels, winning by 22 seconds ahead of Jim Stanton in P2, and Richard Stanton making up the podium there in a great defensive effort in P3. Paul Williams, P4 for Team Tetra Rouge, showing in the end it's not about how you start, it's about how you finish, having dropped all the way to the back of the order and pulled his way back up to P4, and then it was Baz Mitchell who completed the top 5 of the LMP2 AM class. Jack Wybe on P6 ahead of Michael Price and Sam Holman there, rounding off the top 8, and then it's Tristan Dino Brega who finished P9 overall, the winner in the GT3 class overall, and also in the GT3 AM class. Congratulations to Dino Brega for repeating history in terms of winning overall and AM beating the pros. Jeremy over there, P10, our GT3 Pro winner, holding off Matthew Prouting and Deirdre Blaming in P12. Arjun Craig and James Slates at P13, P14, completing our GT3 AM podium. Elwin Sykes and Davide Fabo completing the GT3 AM top 5. And then we can see Lucas Romano P17, P4 in class, the GT3 Pros. Mark Sykes P18 in the GT3 AMs, that's P6. And as we look further down there, Jonathan Collins having a difficult day of racing today alongside Lorenzo Galtieri, completing our top 20. Then Sean Scudder, Navarro DeBova, Kurt Van Hoenacker and Chris Keaton finishing off our order there down to P24. Well, what a fantastic race, ladies and gentlemen. And well, that means we now have to get ready for our post-round interviews. Don't go anywhere. You won't miss them. We'll be back in approximately 4 to 5 minutes to talk to our 4 selected drivers for tonight and hear their thoughts on what has been an absolutely daunting round of racing.
Well, we are ready for our post-round interviews of our drivers, ladies and gentlemen. And well, before we come on to our drivers, what a fantastic pair of races. A Motorsport or Canadian Tire Motorsports Park, proving to be a very, very tricky circuit through and through, with the case it's all about consistency and avoiding those critical mistakes, particularly the nasty turn 2 and also turn 5. But we've got 4 drivers lined up tonight for our post-round interviews, and we'll be starting off with the LMP AM driver of Richard Stanton, the number 23 machine, as we look to bring the privateer driver in very shortly to talk about his experience. And as we bring him into the interview room, Richard, thank you for joining us. Looks like it was quite difficult out there tonight, but still a difficult sprint matched in the end by a very strong defensive effort in the feature. How do you feel your night went tonight?
Yeah, so overall, really pleased with how it went, to be honest. Quali, I think, could have gone a little bit better for me. I was hoping to finish a little bit higher than I did in P9. I'd certainly been quicker through practice, but I think I, managed to make up for that through both the sprint race and the feature race after it.
Well, indeed, and it showed. And just going into qualifying, with regards to that difficulty in qualifying, do you feel it was, say, traffic, or you just couldn't quite get into the rhythm? Because we saw a lot of drivers, including yourself, struggling in that qualifying session.
Yeah, I think it is traffic. I think that's fair to say. The speed of the LMPs compared to the GT3s, you come upon them so quick, and the track itself is very difficult to get around them as well. So certainly the practice I'd been doing, probably not doing quite so much with GT cars in there as well. And so it really did have a big impact on me. Every time I was coming up on a hot lap, I was meeting traffic towards the end of it, and it really slowed me down, I think.
Well, regardless of where you qualified, you showed you could come through the order in the sprint race. And just taking us through that open lap of the sprint race, we saw a bit of dramatics right at the front, a couple of drivers in contact. Where were you in all of that? Because you just seemed to gradually needle your way through the order on the opening couple of laps.
I did, yeah. So it was a little bit frantic. So I was around 4th or 5th at the start. Got my brother Jim just up ahead of me, and I could see that somebody in front had taken him and a couple of others out. So I tried to take the inside line, keep myself out of trouble as best as I could. Unfortunately, as we came up to turn 2, Holman had a little bit of a wibbly wobbly and forced me wide, forced me off the track. But managed to recover, got myself back up to P4, which from 9th place was a really good result for me in the end.
Oh, most definitely. And transferring that momentum into the feature, what was the plan in the feature race? Because we saw in the Apex Racing Academy lobby earlier this week, and indeed we've seen in practice as well, the high rate of attrition around here. Was there a particular pace you were riding to? She looked very consistent and smooth out there.
Yeah, there was. I'd spoken to my 2 brothers before the race, and the week before, I made a couple of silly mistakes, and it really does cost you. These are really races of attrition. You've got to keep yourself in them, and I knew I could probably push down to the 107s, but I said I wanted to run myself at 108.5, 109 consistently through the race. No silly mistakes, avoid contacts at all cost, and see where I could put myself at the end of it. I mean, I have to say there was some fantastic driving all round from all the drivers, whether it was the LMPs or GT3s. I saw some fantastic battles and had many of my own as well. Got to take my hat off and respect to Baz Meacham. 20 minutes of epic battling with him and him keeping it clean all the way through it as well. It was a fantastic race.
Oh, indeed, and that's what we were to come on to, that battle between yourself and Baz Meacham. We saw time and time again that it was the case that he had a way of catching up to you through the corners, particularly turns 1 through to 3, but going through the Moss hairpin at turn 5, that seems to be where you just had that advantage. Was that something you picked up on, or was it the case that you're more focused on just keeping the car pointed in the right direction?
No, it was. It was definitely something that I picked up on. You can see it in the Delta throughout most of the lap. He was a faster driver than me, but certainly, I had my brother Matt as my crew chief. He was talking to me about focus on the exit through Moss, because when you get to that long straight, that's really where you get to make the time back up. So that's what I focused on: get a good line out of there, make sure I can get back on the power nice and early. And you could see it. It was the only time I was able to keep him away from me. Certainly, as we were going through, 1 and 2, as you rightly commentated, I was having to take a particularly defensive line and pretty early as well, because I could see he wanted to go up the inside of me on quite a few occasions.
Oh, indeed. And I do have to ask, when Baz had that moment coming out of turn 3 with only a few minutes to go, was there a little bit of an early celebration down in the paddock with regards to P3 was in the bag?
There may well have been. I may have screamed a little bit down the microphone to to my brothers on Discord. Yeah, I mean, it's it gets quite intense, and it felt like an intense race throughout. If I'm being honest, whether it was Meacham or Williams, I seemed to be having to battle quite a lot throughout it, so it felt really intense. And I think at that point, seeing that Williams was probably about 11, 12 seconds behind, felt like I could actually ease off a little bit and just bring the car home nice and safely. I think if I'd have been a little bit closer to my brother, I might have gone for it a little bit harder. But it was great to finish third in the end.
Oh, well, that's brilliant to hear. And now looking ahead to round 4 in a week's time, we head to Daytona, the legendary American circuit, for our first Super Endurance round. How are you feeling for 2 hours of Daytona?
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to it. Of course, I'm going to be after the result this week, but 2 hours is intense. An hour this week was tough. I certainly slept well after it. So, plenty of preparation, plenty of practice, get some good seat time, and again, just stick to the game plan. Really, keep the car on the track, keep out of trouble, navigate traffic well, and let's see what happens. It's a really competitive league, and I think after the first couple of weeks, it's really sorted itself out in terms of the driving. The respect of the drivers, and I'm really looking forward to it.
Oh, that's fantastic to hear. Well, with that, thank you once again for joining us in the interview room. Congratulations on your results tonight, and we look forward to seeing you take to the Daytona circuit in a week's time.
Thanks for having me, Paul. Take care.
You too. So hearing that from Richard Stanton, very happy with his performances through and through. Qualifying was a bit of a struggle, but in the end he was able to arrest that form and turn it around. Coming through the field in the sprint and holding on to that P4 in the end, and in the feature going one step further to be on the podium in third place with that brilliant battle, in his own words, with Baz Meacham. Great respect shown, and in the end just able to hold it together and keep Meacham behind, having to defend into corners, knowing where he could capitalise, working with his brothers on what is the team chat, of course, so they could analyse where it was the case that Richard would be the stronger of the drivers and they could keep that gap. And in the end, it was Meacham who dropped it coming out of turn number 3, and that's what gave him that opportunity to finish third. But now we must come from an LMP2 driver to one of our GT3 drivers, our only GT3 driver for interview tonight, and that is Jeremy Debova. Let's bring our back-to-back winner tonight into the interview room and hear what he's got to say. And as we very shortly bring him into the interview room, of course, backing up what was a fantastic set of results earlier in the season with now 2 wins back-to-back. We bring him into the interview room. Jeremy, it looks as though you're on absolute form tonight in the Mercedes. How does it feel to be a back-to-back winner at Mosport?
Good evening, Paul. Well, it feels very good, and I'm very happy with the double here. And I need that points for the championship because Lucas also drive 2 races very great. Peter was not here tonight, so I think it was for me the point to from in front of Lucas, and I think I did that today.
Oh, most definitely, I'd say. And starting really from the beginning, qualifying a great lap from yourself in the Mercedes. It looked as though everything was hooked up. Did the car feel right out there, or was there a bit more time out on the track?
For me, the qualifying has altered a little big problem because I also make myself difficult to start in the midfield. But here I feel myself quite very good in the Mercedes, and the lap was like one of my best I ever did. So it was very happy with that.
And then going into the sprint race, we saw a great start from yourself, keeping the rest of the GT3 Pro class behind you. And what was the focus at the start of the race? Was it to try and break the toe going down that back straight? Because we know the Mercedes is very strong on the straights.
Well, at first time I have no plan. I would just keep on my car on the track, and I know that Lucas was there, Dide was there, Matthew was also there. So I know they can push me very hard, but I know from myself I can normally driving very well under pressure. So it was just to keep the focus, no make any mistake, and drive clean and so fast as I could.
Oh, indeed. And in the end, with that win, and we do have to take a brief moment, of course, a special day at Mosport because you picked up the win in the sprint in the Pro class, and your son Navarro picked up the win in the AM class. Was that a special family moment, the two of you winning your respective classes?
Yeah, and that was absolutely special for me and my son also, because we drive now 3 seasons here, and it was the first time we can make the double, to me on the pro and he on the IM class. And for myself, from him, the team, it was an unbelievable moment, and very happy with it.
Oh, well, that's brilliant to hear. And whilst Navarro was not able to make it back-to-back wins in the feature, you were able to. What was your game plan in the feature? Because it was a very strong race from yourself.
But like I said before, for me the plan was to try to in front of Lucas, and I don't want any mistake again, because we have the reverse grid, so we have to come from the back to so high as possible. But everything looks quite okay. Dida was also continue in front in the first 5-6 laps. I think he made a little mistake, and from that I could overtake him also, though I was in the lead again. And yeah, that was again 1 point to stay the car on the track. But the last few 2 laps, I make a stupid mistake on the second corner, go with my right tire on the grass, and I lost the car, but no big damage. But Matthew was at that point 11 seconds behind, I think. So he came back to a half of a second. He tried to on the uphill one overtake, but I could I could make it to in front of him, and then I saw he didn't any move to attack again. So was happy that the race was over at that moment.
Oh, indeed, it was a very tense moment at the end there, but you held him at bay to make it 2 wins out of 2. And now looking ahead to Daytona in a week's time, the first of our 3 super endurance rounds, how are you feeling for 2 hours of Daytona?
I'm looking forward to Daytona. I love the track. The Mercedes is also good there, I think. And for myself, I feel myself very comfortable in the car. So one maybe little thing that changed, we have now to use the medium setup, and I drive at the moment not with the Mercedes at that setup, so I need to see what the car do, but I feel myself quite okay for make a good result also there.
Oh, well, we look forward to seeing how you get on at Daytona in a week's time. But until then, Jeremy, congratulations on back-to-back wins. And, of course, a special moment in the Dabova family in the series today. And we look forward to seeing you out on circuit in a week's time.
Thank you very much, Paul, and good evening. Thank you.
Take care. So hearing there from Jeremy Debo from Challenge by DB1, and very happy with the performance over the course of the evening of the team and also of himself and his son, and commenting there on the fact that there was the only game plan he had was to get ahead of Lucas Romano over the course of both races, because really seeing Romano as his major threat in the championship, with Romano having all that momentum going into the round, and where it's definitely worked out, he's been able to get ahead and stem Romano's momentum, and I will be interested to see what those championship standings look like after 3 rounds. I think the top of the GT3 Pro class is going to be tighter than ever, and it is the case. It's been brought right back out into the open thanks to Jeremy's 2 wins today, and 2 very deserved wins. But with that, we now come on to our 3rd driver, and that is the LMP2 AM driver of Stefan Wessels. We bring him into the interview room, and let's hear what he's got to say from what was quite a roller coaster ride of a journey, I would say, over the course of tonight's proceedings, particularly in the sprint and also to a degree in the feature. Well, as we bring Stefan into the room, good evening to you, Stefan. Quite the roller coaster ride of race this night, but a 2nd place in the sprint, just missing out on the win, and then a win in the feature by a comfortable margin. How do you feel Motorsport treated you?
Hi, Paul. Evening. No, look, the results are good. The overall results are good. A little bit annoyed about race 1 because I made a silly mistake in turn 5 that cost me a win. But I mean, 2nd place after going off track is not the end of the world. I had fastest laps, that makes up for that a little bit. And the track itself is awesome, man. Brilliant track to drive.
Well, that's great to hear in terms of enjoying the track and also the results. Just taking us back to qualifying, very close between yourself and Baz Meacham. In the end, you take him pole by only 8 thousandths of a second. And Baz Meacham in the pits for a bit of time towards the end, thinking that there probably wasn't space to get another lap in. Was that the best lap you could get out there, or was there a bit more?
No, they would in that time it should have been a 106. It was just a result of traffic and not getting the best lap in when counted. I was on better laps at multiple points during that session, but then just catching a GT3 at the wrong time, and they're also on the lap, so I mean sometimes you try and overtake them, but then just ends up ruining 2 laps. So it's very tricky. So most of the time you just back out and let them do their lap, and then you reset. And sometimes when you reset, you don't get sector 1 right, and then you kind of have to hope you get the end of the lap right. So yeah, how it goes.
Well, indeed, difficult out there in qualifying, but you managed to find that lap in the end that put you on pole. And then going into the sprint race, of course, a solid start from yourself, and then quite a bit of drama behind, and then a little bit of drama for yourself. Just take us through the sort of emotional ride that was that sprint race.
Okay, yeah. So the sprint race started with the lights went green very early. We were still coming around the turn, and it went green, and I got a jump on everyone. And second and third had a small coming together in turn 1, but I mean high-speed corner if you go side by side and you touch. Unfortunately, so Baz and Paul went off track. So I had a fairly comfortable gap after lap 1. I had a 3.5-second gap, so I knew I just had to keep it on track. At the same time, Tristan was in P1 youth class as well. So as a team race, it was brilliant for the two of us because RTA Blue as a team has had a horrid season so far, to be honest. So it was a great start, great lap 1, lap 2, and I was just keep it easy. And then lap 3 came into turn 5. I don't know, just braked a bit late and not pushed the pedal hard enough or whatever, and just you go a little bit wide and gone. You're busy skating on the grass on the outside there. So I saved that, got back into second, and unfortunately Tristan had his netcode issue. So what was looking like a very good race for RTA Blue turned up into a second place for one car. So yeah.
Indeed, and with those fortunes not working out in the sprint and then going into the feature, it did seem as though Racing Team Astra Blue, yourself included, really came on strong in the feature. Was it a case of we just got to go for broke now, given how things played out in the sprint?
Well, it was a case of we all knew we had the pace. I mean, I knew I had the pace, Tristan knew I had the pace, and he started on pole on his side, so that was cool for him. On my side, I knew I had the pace, but also overtaking is not that easy, as you spotted with a lot of the LMP guys struggling to overtake at this track. So yeah, it was fun. I mean, the guys made a couple of mistakes that quite easily gave me into second position. Like I started second last in class, and I was in second position quite early on just by keeping my nose clean. And then I had that unfortunate incident on the back straight with the GT3 coming over to retake the racing line, and I had to take evasive action. Luckily, there was tarmac runoff, so that put me back into I think fourth position. And yeah, from there we had like 4 cars nose to tail, insane racing, dirty air, the lot. Small contact with Richard on the brakes, and then at the same time I didn't want to mess up Michael's race. I let him come past, and then the two of them had a coming together the next lap, and that gave me 2 positions again. Yeah, and I think Collins went off as well, so that gave me another position. So yeah, it was a crazy race, man. It's fun but crazy. The second half was just calm down, do my own laps, go to the end.
Oh, indeed, it did look a lot calmer in the second half of the race and just bringing those laps in and gradually bringing home the win. And looking ahead to next week, of course, we wrap up the first third of the season with the first Super Endurance at Daytona. How are you feeling for the 2-hour race on the American circuit?
Daytona has never been the best of hunting grounds for me, I would say, based on last season. But I'm feeling good. I think we will have a good race. The setup we're going to be running next week is a lower downforce setup, so the LMPs are absolutely flying in the straight, and turn 1 is not so easy on the setup, but it's going to be good, man. I think we'll have a good race. Every race the how can I say, the awareness between the GT3s and the LMPs are getting better and better, and everyone is just racing better together. Similar thing we experienced last season, where after race 3 or 4, I mean, the league just started coming alive, and that's what it feels like it's doing now.
Oh, most definitely. And it's very nice to hear that feedback from yourself with how it's all coming together up and down the field in terms of the racing. And with that, congratulations on your second and first place tonight. And we look forward to seeing you take to Daytona in a week's time. But until then, take care and thank you for joining us for an interview as always, Stefan.
Good ball. Keep up. Cheers.
Have a lovely night.
You too.
So hearing that from Stefan Wessels, who saying a bit of the emotional roller coaster with regards to the sprint race in particular, where Racing Team Astra Blue, the team he's racing for and representing, were looking good for wins in both the GT3 AM and the LMP2 AM classes, only to see both of those wins fall away and instead it being a second place purely for Wessels. And that's the one thing that is always key to know about Wessels, always thinking not just about his performances, but the team and the team contribution in terms of overall points. And that's a brilliant mindset to have, that team player mindset. And I think in the end, with both Dina Brega and Wessels bringing home wins in their respective classes in the feature, pleased with that. And I do wonder whether they will be able to make it another pair of wins at what is Daytona. They're looking good, I can definitely tell you that. But now we look ahead to our final driver interview, and that is Michael Price, our LMP2 AM driver as well. Let's bring up Michael in. I know he's been patiently waiting and hear what he's got to say after what has been a evening of mixed fortunes, with his sprint being a win and what is his feature being a P7, a very difficult P7 at that. Whereas he joins us in the interview room now. Michael, a very mixed day at Motorsport for you. A win in the sprint, but a P7 in the feature. How do you feel the Canadian circuit treated you, all in consideration?
All in all, a game of two halves today. Well, on that particular day. But is what it is, mate. In the first race, I think I got lucky with the start because there was an accident between second and third. So I gained from that. So there was a bit of good fortune in that sense. And then Stefan managed to make an unforced error because he's normally very consistent. So I gained from that. And I was in a very fortunate position and managed to hold on to win. So I was obviously very chuffed with that. Very excited in regards to the second race. Thought I had pace coming from the back. Was dropping some moves. And then unfortunately came to clashes with a couple of cars, mate. I don't think there was anything intentional in it, but like I said, I genuinely thought I had the pace to at least finish, target 3 to position P3 to 5 I was looking at. So it was unfortunate, but that's racing, eh?
Oh, indeed it is. But talking a little bit about your pace and how it's really coming alive, we saw in qualifying, you qualified P4, but to be fair, only 1.5 tenths off of Wessels' pole lap. And, well, the delta between P5 Jim Stanton all the way up to Wessels was only 2.5 tenths. How are you feeling your qualifying laps going? Because we're seeing more and more pace coming out of you of each and every session.
Yeah, I think I'm getting better. I've got a problem with my wheel at the moment. The left grip is literally hanging off. So there's no excuses in regards to it, but I'm looking forward to getting a new wheel in the next 10 days, 2 weeks. And I think that's going to help because I'm experiencing a lot of pain coming through the wheel because it's obviously not aligned properly. But yeah, the pace and consistency seems to be getting there. And, it's a great competition, respectful driving most of the time. And like I say, when there are events, I genuinely believe that there's nothing, with any bad intentionals or anything like that. So it's a great league, and I hope that people can see the drama and excitement and get the entertainment that they thoroughly deserve from this great production.
Oh, indeed. And I think many tuning in would agree with you there tonight. And indeed, throughout the series so far, we've had some fantastic battles. Yourself being right in the mix there as well. And just talking about the sprint race and your win there, you were saying about the fact fortune did favour you with the incidents at the start, plus Wessels dropping it midway through the race. But when you took the lead, I have to ask, what was going through your mind from that point to the end? Was it sort of, don't bin this, don't let him win?
All I was thinking about was Stefan. And that's the worst thing that you can do when you start thinking about the guy behind you, right? You're losing time. So I just thought, just try and concentrate on the tarmac in front of you, try and stay consistent and, see what happens. And like I said, fortune favored me that time around, but it showed me the other side of the pack in the second race. But hey, that's racing. So all in all, like I said before, I'm pretty realistic, and I'll take that, in regards to a result.
Oh, indeed. And whilst we could come onto the feature, of course, as you were saying earlier, one of those ones whereby the incident where I don't think there was any malice in it, but things just went a little bit wrong. After the incident, went back out on circuit and, well, you recovered to P7 in the end, but what did it become more about then? Was it just about finding time out on circuit, seeing where you could improve lap time? What kept you motivated to go back out and keep putting the laps in?
Well, when you're involved in the championship, you don't have the option because, like I say, I had 2 incidents. So I started getting to pace, had an incident with, I can't remember which drivers it was and in what sequence, so you have to forgive me.
That's right.
But the first incident obviously put me back. Then I went into the pits, I think, to try and do the undercut. And then I got hit again, and I was like, by then, you lose your consistency, and you lose your whole momentum, which is unfortunate, but hey, it happens. And throughout the whole, event and throughout the whole series, it's going to pan out. All these bad incidents one way and, getting lucky the other way, it pans out for everybody. So, it's been a great event. I'm loving every single minute of the event, loving it.
Oh, indeed, and that's great to hear. And speaking of events and what's upcoming, of course, next week we go to Daytona for the first of our 2 super endurance rounds. How are you feeling for the legendary American circuit?
Daytona was the first ever endurance race that I did in iRacing. So I've been in iRacing since December. It was the first ever event. And that was pretty dramatic. So, but it panned out that I was quite consistent in it as well. So, hopefully, over the 2-hour period, I can show the kind of consistency that you've been highlighting, and put in a good performance.
Well, we look forward to seeing how you get on at Daytona in a week's time. But until then, Michael, congratulations on your results today. And we're grateful to have you in the interview room as always. And we look forward to seeing you out on track in a week's time.
We're grateful to have you, mate. You're an amazing commentator. Keep it up, bro.
I'll keep on doing my best. Thank you. That's very kind.
Take it easy. Have a good weekend.
You too. All the best.
Bye, buddy. Bye.
So hearing there from Michael Price, having those mixed fortunes today, but I think quite a bit of glee and pride taking the fact that he kept it together in the sprint. And, well, one thing, as we're talking to Michael there, the gap or the delta between the qualifying laps in the LMP2 AM class, I can tell you, in the opening round of the season, that delta was 0.6 of a second between the top 5. It's now down to 2.5 tenths. That shows you how competitive and how everybody is improving, including Michael himself. And as he was saying there, in the fact that he qualified P4, the drama at the start meant he moved up to P2, then with Vessels making that one mistake. And that's all it takes now in that LMP2 AM class is one mistake, and it completely changes the complexion of the order. And that's where Price was able to capitalise and held off Vessels to the end of the sprint. And in the feature, again, 2 incidents. May not have been his fault. Again, not going to go into that per se. What's done is done. But coming back out and keep on pushing, trying to get those points on the board. And I think Price definitely with the right mindset. And I think he's going to go very strongly at Daytona. And we could look forward to seeing a spectacular drive from him. Or at least an attempt at a spectacular drive, of course, all things in consideration as always. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, that just about brings to a conclusion tonight's show. Thank you very much for watching as always. And if you have enjoyed and want to know more about the Next Gen Racing community in terms of what we do, the series we run, and everything else about us, why not check us out, our official website, that's nextgenracing.co.uk. Alternatively, our official Facebook group. That is facebook.com/groups/nextgenracing. Also, a huge thank you to our partners without whom we'd not be able to bring you Lobby 2, our title sponsor for the lobby. That's IMB Racewear and their website, imbRacewear.com. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, we now must pack our bags up because we move from Canada back to the United States for the final round of the series' tour of the North American continent, and we'll be heading to Daytona International Speedway in a week's time. time. The race, of course, for Lobby 2 will happen on Wednesday the 27th of April, but we will be bringing you all the racing action as if it were live for the first Super Endurance round that the IMB race where Lobby drivers will be taking part in, and that will be on Friday the 29th of April 2022. You'll have to start your engines in a week's time because you can be sure the racing is going to be tense, tight, there'll be plenty of slipstream and plenty of strategy as well. But until then, we have been Next Gen Racing. I have been Paul, TX141 Walsh, also known as Britain of Spit, depending on what media you follow me on. And well, before we say goodbye, one last thing to say as well is if you thought the racing was close, it's only going to get closer as the season goes on. So if you're not tuned on a regular basis, keep on tuning from this point forwards because it's going to get better. But until next week, have a great weekend, stay safe, stay smiling, stay positive, and most importantly, remember to stay on track. Good night.